Welcome, everyone. Hello, 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 and welcome to Inspire 2026. I am Danielle Benson. I am a voice and speaking coach, and this event today is specifically for people that I've worked with to kind of showcase a new way of doing things. We are moving into a more inspired, more improvised way of living, and all of these wonderful speakers have very generously decided to trust me in this new system that I'm sharing with people on how to create a talk without writing it down, without memorizing it. And so that is what you will be seeing today. All of the talks today have been prepared, they have been worked on, but they are not written down. None of them have been scripted. It is all improvised within a structure. And the idea for this is that it's more fresh, it's more flexible, it's more alive, it's more exciting, and it's more raw and real and human, because I don't know about you, but for 2026, I want to live a more human life. I want to be connected to more humans. AI is like slowly creeping in and taking over a lot of things. And I find myself yearning more and more for true connection, real deep connection, messy connection. It doesn't need to be perfect, messy connection with real human beings who are living their purpose, who are living honestly and vulnerably and courageously. And every single one of these speakers today is so courageous. They are sharing personal stories, personal insights, personal passions of their own that are very close to their heart. And they are all vulnerable in the way that they share and so courageous in the way that they show up. And that is so important, I think, for speakers, because if we wait for confidence to show up, confidence never shows up. Confidence only comes after we do the courageous thing, after we get out there, after we prove to ourselves that we're not going to die. Then confidence saunters along and goes like, hey, what's up? But before that, we're all nervous, and there's a lot of scary things about public speaking, where we're sharing our thoughts, we're sharing ourselves, we're letting ourselves be seen and heard, and with that comes the possibility of rejection, of being judged in some way. But my theory is the more real we are, the more relatable we are, the less likely we are to be judged, because people can see that human connection. They can see themselves in us. And it's when we're trying to be perfect, it's when we're going, I know everything, that's when people are going to judge us, because obviously that's a lie. And anytime we try and put up a facade, there's this danger of the facade falling away, of people seeing behind the curtain. And that, I think, is what really creates imposter syndrome. That, I think, is why most speakers are too scared to get up and share their message, not because they don't have something amazing to share, and not because they're not good speakers, but because we have this idea that we have to try to pretend to be better than we are, or that our best day is every day. And just that tiny little bit of pretending can create this big imposter syndrome gap. And I think the more we can be ourselves, be vulnerable, learn in public, grow in public, the more trustworthy we become, the more we can build real relationships, and the more we can just, live together and do business together and inspire each other and make movements and make things happen. So speaking of transparency, let me just quickly look at my notes and make sure I haven't forgotten anything really important that I wanted to say before we get started. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm really excited about the speakers today. So what you can expect is, I'm doing this little introduction right now, and then we're going to have 3 speakers, and then we're going to have a Q&A panel of all of the speakers together, and then we're going to have 3 speakers. There will be time after each speaker for a little bit of Q&A, depending on how long they go, depending on how long or short they go. Some speakers will be being interviewed by me. Some of them will just kind of go off on their own because they know what they want to say. And everyone's at a different level. Everyone's at a completely different place. And that is what is so wonderful, is because they're all so exciting to listen to. And they're all so inspiring. And they come from completely different places and completely different backgrounds. And they have completely different messages. But there's this through line of being true to yourself and connecting to yourself and figuring out who you are, that I think we can all relate to. And that's why this is so inspiring, because there's so many different styles of speaking you're going to see today, and they're all really good. And it's not like, a good speaker does this. A good speaker can be seen, heard, and understood. Everything else is a choice. Everything else is a stylistic choice. So I've got an extra 5 minutes. Brooke, are you ready to jump in and get started? Just putting you on the
Okay,
spot.
yes,
No worries.
absolutely. I mean, no, of course not. I
No.
want to run away, but I'm not going to run away. We're going to do this.
She's not going to run away, ladies and gentlemen. She's going to stay here. I'm going to introduce you to Brooke before she starts speaking, and yeah, and then we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to spotlight you as I introduce you, so that everyone can see your beautiful face while I'm talking about you. Yeah, pose. Good. So it is my honor to introduce our first speaker today, who's Brooke Bauman. And Brooke and I have been working together for a little while, and she has the most amazing story. She has such passion and charisma, and her excitement is contagious. So I think you're going to really enjoy this. Just to tell you a little bit about Brooke and what she's speaking about today, this bio is specifically for this talk. Brooke Bauman spent most of her childhood and young adulthood unhappy, always seeking an elusive something better. Her journey led her through drug addiction to homelessness, where she had a series of insights that transformed her into someone far happier and more capable than she'd ever been. Within a year of leaving the streets, she and friends founded Vibe Camp, a wholesome yearly gathering for a specific flavor of smart weirdo that has since inspired communities and gatherings around the world. Brooke, it is such a joy to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Danielle. Hi, everyone. So I am one of the happiest people I know, and it took me a very long time to get here. I didn't believe in happiness for most of my life. I always told people I was fine. I wasn't a happy person. I thought anybody who claimed to be a happy person was either naive or lying to themselves or lying to me. And that changed. And I don't know how to help people do the thing that I did. I call it my happiness switch flipping. That involved a near death experience, lots of trauma, very hard to replicate. But I do think that the way I maintain it is something like following delight. And I'm going to come back to that after a long winding story. But that is how I maintain this incredible level of happiness that I have found. So I spent a lot of my life seeking, as the introduction said. I always kind of felt like something wasn't quite right. I remember in junior high looking around and feeling like the other kids were smiling more than I was. And my child brain, that must mean that they're happier than I am. And so I looked around and I felt like this was, I'm a millennial. So this was at a time when there were actually different subcultures. There was the popular kids and the nerds and the jocks, and the popular kids seemed to be smiling the most. So I decided to try and infiltrate them, and I got in the outer realms and realized really they were the ones who liked themselves the most. Other people didn't really actually like them, and also a lot of the smiling was fake, and you had to be kind of cruel to maintain your place in this group of people. And so this started off like a multi-year process of kind of ping-ponging, like, oh, okay, that's wrong. What's bad about that? Well, they're pretty shallow. Who's not shallow? And I would often do a thing where I would sometimes I would find the guy who kind of exemplified whatever character trait was next. And if I could get him to date me, that meant I was kind of this thing by proxy. So I found the smartest, weirdest guy in my freshman class, got him to date me. And then, that went about as well as you'd expect that kind of tactic to work. Over the course of high school and a little after, I went from the popular kid, the smart, weird kid, to the was like a hippie leftist for a while, had an anarchist phase, had a hipster phase, and all of these things. I would kind of get to the, close to the core or to the core, and then the cracks would start to form. And I realized, okay, this is not actually the best way to be. And some other things that were pretty crucial to this journey in high school. I remember seeing a psychiatrist for just one session. That he told me that I had generalized anxiety disorder, which I just thought was absolute bullshit because I was so chill. I was so chill. I wasn't anxious. What are you talking about? Kind of absolutely dismissed him. But one of the things that he said, we were having a conversation about my relationship with my family, and he was asking me how those things made me feel, and I kept being like mad. And he'd be like, no, no, how does it make you feel? And I'd be like, angry. and it just kind of kept going. And that was the very first time it even came into my awareness. I was 18 years old. The very first time it came to my awareness that feelings were a thing you feel in your body and not just like words you said when you wanted certain outcomes. And I think this is really core to a lot of where I went astray. I had no access to what was actually going on in my body. And coming out of that was a long process of learning to become more embodied and more connected to those things. I did a lot of this through drug use. You can kind of break up my adult life based on which drug I was using during which chunk of time. First was MDMA, and it was really powerful. It was really therapeutic. It was accidentally therapeutic. We weren't trying to heal our childhood traumas, but we were sitting in a small room with people that we really liked and talking about our childhoods and our feelings, and it was really good for my self-esteem. I thought they were really cool, and they liked me somehow. I'm still kind of a mystery to me. And I remember a moment during the latter half of my senior year of high school. I left the high school to go do a college connection program, and I felt so cool and adult and independent. And it was a special time in my life. And I remember sitting in the library one day in this patch of sunlight, and this song I really loved was playing, and I could feel the MDMA, I could feel the serotonin. I was completely sober, but that was like a first kind of inkling, beginning a long process of me very slowly starting to actually become connected to my feelings. After MDMA was cocaine. Cocaine lasted about 2 years. It was my real education. It was during time when I was going to college in Santa Cruz, and I wasn't actually. I was enrolled in college. I wasn't really going to classes. What I was doing was spending 3 days at a time talking to my friends while doing cocaine. We had kind of a rotating friend group, and we would talk about our childhoods and like why we did the things we did and why other people were doing the things they do. We were really trying to figure out what it means to be human and how to do that better. And this period of my life was the only other one aside from the recent 6 years or so where life just felt really magical. But it was really tied to the cocaine. I would still feel it for a few days after I was high, but then eventually I would go back down to this baseline, and it never quite became part of my identity the way it is now. And I ended up falling in love. I moved out of Santa Cruz with this guy that I hadn't really believed in love before I met him, and that became the most important thing. Like, it kind of became the only thing, which is not good. I let the rest of my life kind of fall to the wayside a little bit. And he didn't use cocaine, and I lost that friend group when I moved out of Santa Cruz. I didn't know how to start it again, and that's one of the reasons why I am as dedicated to community building as I am now, because I think about all the people who are seeking that kind of thing and really want to be around, intellectually curious, alive groups of people who are really just earnestly trying to figure it all out. And I think that was the start of my depression. I was not aware of it at all for many years after that, but I think it was losing that friend group and that kind of almost access to the divine, if you want to think about it that way. And I just kind of faded for 6 or 7 years or so. I was working at Chipotle, I had a small group of friends, we played board games. I can't really speak much more about that period of my life, except I always do this. It's funny how you tell people about my history, and heroin use is always the thing that stands out the most, and I keep forgetting it in some of these run throughs because it just feels less it was sort of in the background, I guess. After about 2 years of doing cocaine, I started getting withdrawal, come downs from it, and I hadn't in the beginning, and those are bad enough. And I had all sorts of other reasons for starting to use heroin. I was in a phase where I wanted to prove to myself that I could overcome withdrawal and I wasn't like those other drug addicts and all those things. So I intentionally got myself physically dependent on it in the beginning. And then I kept using it for a lot of different reasons, including I wanted to keep using cocaine. Unfortunately, when I moved out of Santa Cruz, I kept the heroin and dropped the cocaine and just kind of lost a lot of years. I wasn't really doing anything with my life. And I think, I'm really grateful. We were engaged by the end of the relationship with the man that I moved to LA with, and I'm really grateful that he broke up with me, because I think that I would have just spent my whole life fine, and I think a lot of people spend their whole lives fine, and I never would have realized that there's so much more possible. At the time, though, I went back to my parents' house. I shaved my head. I cried for a month. My mom took me out to get a pedicure done, and she told me later the nail tech asked if I was on chemo. And then, of course, I moved back to LA and I kept sleeping with him, which really just made the whole thing a lot worse. I didn't have a plan. At this point, like, things were getting pretty bad in my head, but I was still not super in touch with that. I didn't have a plan. I was living with some friends and spending about half the week at this guy's house. And all my friends moved out of the building that we were in. I was sleeping in a little, I was very broke. Heroin's very expensive. I was sleeping in a little cubby underneath their kitchen, little like Harry Potter hobbit hole thing. And they all moved out on December 31st, January 2016. And on January 1st, 2017, I think this is just stress, but I woke up with severe sciatica. I had seen videos of women in childbirth and seen them screaming, and I just couldn't comprehend what could lead to that, like that, what experiencing that kind of pain was like. And I screamed when they took me in for a CT scan. It took a couple of techs to lift me up and down. And the pain was at a pretty severe level for a few months. I couldn't really walk. I couldn't like turn my head side to side. I would even try not to cough or sneeze because it was shooting pain down my side. And at this point, I'd been mainlining fentanyl, and I just kind of was living in my car. And I this was the first time I really contemplated suicide in my life, because I did not want to. I did not want to live at with pain levels that high. But I was on vacation pay. I'd been still working at Chipotle. I was a fairly functional addict through most of this time until I very much wasn't. So vacation pay ran out, and around 6 months into 2017, I think my tire fell off my car, which is a whole other story. At the same time as my fentanyl dealer stopped picking up his phone, it turns out there'd been like a gang-related shootout in his living room, and he was not a gang member. He was actually a computer programmer who like had some kind of injury. So that's one of the things I think is really interesting to bring up in these sorts of talks, and whatever writing I do, it could happen to anybody. But I needed to learn how to be homeless. I was going to lose my car. I also started using crystal to help with the withdrawal symptoms of the heroin, which worked. I haven't touched opiates since 2017, but I did graduate. I think crystal meth is actually a lot worse for you than heroin is. And so I was on the street. I was homeless, like fully homeless, and all the things that entails for about 2.5 years. And I'm going to skip over a lot of that, but at some point I would like to talk more, and I'm happy to talk more if people want to reach out to me after this about what it's like specifically being a woman on the street. Women would disappear a lot, and you kind of just never really know if they ended up in jail, if they happened to get out, or if they died. And oftentimes the people that you need protection from the most were the people that you had gone to for protection. So we're skipping over about a year and a half. There were assaults. Like police with big guns pointed at me. All sorts of things happened. And then when it wasn't the most like the worst rock bottom anyone could conceivably get to in life, but it was like pretty far on that spectrum. When I met this guy who was young and handsome, and he was working long hours, and he seemed to have his life put together in all the ways I didn't. And one of the things that happened after my sciatica started to feel better, like I knew that I could have gone in to get a job if I could have walked into a restaurant. I'd always worked at restaurants, but I didn't see the point. The world was horrible. Everything was horrible. People were horrible. It was so much work. It's so much work to live in society, to have to think about taxes and what time you're getting up and where you're going to live, and debt and all these things. And I just didn't see the point of like getting myself back there. And I knew that, I'm sorry, I'm just going to close this chat because it is popping things up and throwing me off. And this was the first time I really recognized that something was wrong in my brain. And you'd think I would have had this realization a lot, maybe the heroin addiction could have been a sign, but every step along this journey, I had thought about why I was doing the things I was doing. And I thought about what value I was getting out of it. I was self-aware in the way that I think, fairly smart people can often get, when you're just like very wrong about a lot of things, but you're thinking about it a lot. So you feel like you know what you're doing. But this was just unavoidable evidence that something had gone wrong. And so I kind of had a moment where I realized I had made some wrong decisions. I had no idea what they were. I kind of liken it a little bit. I'm not very well versed in Eastern traditions, but it feels a little bit like it could be kind of like the Buddhist point of surrender. Like I was willing to question everything. Any kind of belief or intuition that I had, it was all equally suspect. I just had no idea. I had no idea where I'd gone wrong. And meeting this guy, one of the core bits of conflict that I'd always had between my mom and I is I care a lot about kind of like internal, the intangible, and she cares a lot about the external indicators of success. And, internally, this guy that I met, his name was Param, seemed to have his life together. Internally, he was a horrible person. Sorry. And externally, he seemed to have his life together in all the ways that I didn't. And so I was like, maybe my mom was right. Maybe I should have gone to college. Maybe I should have gotten like a real person job and like gone the straight path. And maybe that's where I went wrong. And so I decided to start dating this guy. And a turning point early on was a conversation I was having with him where he was telling me about this kind of crush at a distance he had, really liked this girl, and he confessed his feelings, and she was maybe kind of flippant about it or blew him off. And he smoked 2 packs of cigarettes, drank a bunch, and woke up in the hospital. He'd had a heart attack at 21, which in retrospect was one of many, many flags I should have paid more attention to. But in my defense, at the time, I did not know he also put a tracking device in her car. All I knew was that he had this big crush. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had a big unrequited crush in high school. I have worked through that. This person needs me more than I need them. And, even in my head, I was like, I just went through all these like pretty traumatic experiences and I need to process those at some point, but not right now. Right now, I need to stop being immature. I need to get my shit together. I need to become somebody else because this person needs me. And so over the course of the next few weeks, I stopped using crystal meth. I got a couple jobs. I became like chipper. I remember running into this one girl who was just like, what happened? You were so depressing to be around. Like, what's going on? um, and I did all these things. I tried to forge myself into the person that I thought he needed me to be. And it just is not going to work. If somebody is really being cruel, if they're full of rage, if they're bigoted, if they're all these things, it doesn't matter who you are. You're not going to be able to change them, and particularly not when you're under their power. It took me a very long time to learn this lesson. I'm going to also skip over a lot of stuff that happened between him and I. I think it was, crystal meth also and trauma and all these things makes time very hard to like go back and think through. I think it was probably around 4 months that I tried really hard to make this work. After every single fight, had nothing else going in my life. I wasn't connected with friends anymore. I had no contact with family. It's kind of funny how abusers will kind of have a playbook. When I finally did start reading about domestic violence, it is just, I mean, he ticked all the boxes. I couldn't be in contact with my street friends because they were criminals. They were drug addicts. It was bad for me to be in contact with these people if I wanted to make my life better. And in one fell swoop, that made sense. It was logical, but he cut me off from the only support network that I had at the time. And it's very, you just kind of get caught up into this alternate version of reality. So after about 4 months, I realized I could not. I was out of ideas. I was out of things to try, and I did not know how dangerous it was to tell people, to tell domestic abusers that you are leaving them every time up to that point. If we had been in conflict, I need to go for a walk. I'm not leaving you. I just need to step away. And of course, he would not even really let me do that. But this time, it's just like I'm out, bro. And that was not very well planned out. He ended up smothering me over the course of about 4 hours in his car. And it was really like some interesting things with that. Like I didn't leave him for another 2 days after. I just sat in his car because I couldn't think. I didn't have energy. I couldn't really like even go get myself food. And I remember I did reach out to one friend and he's like, I don't really believe you. Why are you still with him if he did that to you? And so maybe that will give you guys some empathy or insight if you ever run into somebody who's in a similar thing. You just cannot do anything. But I did spend those 2 days reading about domestic violence because I had never really done a proper study of it before, and this was finally the thing. I had petique. I don't remember if that's how you pronounce it. I had the little bloody patch in my eye and like cut marks in my mouth. And I remember just being like, I've watched true crime. This is the kind of thing that they use to determine if somebody's a murder victim or not. This seems bad. And that's finally what made me realize that this is not just a bad relationship. There were other things going on. And I always like to tell people this story because it's what actually got me out of his car. So if you ever have friends who are in some kind of situation, please tell them about this. I read a study that said that you are 700% more likely to die at the hands of an intimate partner when they use blocked airway attacks versus other kinds of violence. And that is the thing that got me out of his car, because the whole time I'd been telling myself, and I really believed that he loved me. It was a twisted love. It was not any kind of thing that I think most of us would think of as love, but I think it was love in his head. I think he was, and we don't need to go into all of that right now, but in my head, I've been like, he's not going to kill me. There's no way he's going to kill me. But I really believe that's probably what all 700% of those people who end up dead think. And the margin of error is just so low with blocked airway attacks. So got myself out, spent a while kind of hiding from him, which was really annoying because when I first got on the street, I looked around. I was like, wow, these people are really paranoid. You're using uppers, you're not sleeping. I'm not gonna let that happen to me. And I so I like very intentionally like spent a couple weeks like working through that and making sure I didn't get paranoid. There are no people out to get me. And then somebody was out to get me. He was like, I'd look around and his car was back there. He'd like show up at spots where he knew I was sleeping at. There's one story I like to tell. There's this guy, Demon, who's a big black guy, kind of, walking, shuffle around with a shopping cart. He's not the kind of person I think most passersby would want to interact with, but he was so sweet. He actually, I ran into him some time later. He'd spent 6 months in jail because clocked part him over the head with a steel pipe after he'd come back to the spot one too many times looking for me, which is not what I would have asked him to do, but it was so sweet. And at some point, and there was no moment with the clouds parting. I didn't get struck by lightning, but it was sometime in this kind of like interregnum period where I just kind of realized that if I could change myself as quickly as I had, gone from being somebody who was just known to be depressing to be around, to being chipper, to like not using, to trying to like, to getting jobs, all these things, it was really fast. And if I could do all of that for somebody else, I could do that for me. And so it took me another like 6 months to get off of the street after that realization. But those 6 months were not all of it, but a lot of it was kind of fun. And so I think about this sometimes, you hear about, people always say you need your material needs met before you can really like even think about happiness. But I was finding headphones. I had a music habit. So I was finding headphones in the trash and I'd walk around singing songs and dancing. I looked insane, but that's okay. I kind of was. I would set myself little quests and tasks when I was dumpster diving. I had like whole worlds built. I remember one dumpster, I was sure it was a Jewish lawyer and his African American girlfriend, and they eventually broke up. It was quite scandalous. I'd be like, oh, I wanna like, I'm gonna make myself a snack just from what I find in this dumpster right now. And I really had a lot of fun. I also found some little magnetic butterflies with the wings would flap, and I stuck them all over Demon's shopping cart one day. Just this big gruff guy. I don't know if he ever figured out it was me. I don't know that there's somebody else it could have been in that like set of people. And I started making better choices. I was not camping near these people that were dangerous. I was getting sleep, and it was very piecemeal. Another thing that was interesting is I started using crystal again, and it felt completely different than any other experience using drugs had in my life. Every time before then, it was kind of almost like a life sentence. And maybe that's like not quite the right way to say it, but it always had this kind of sense of permanence about it. And this time, I was just like, wow, I almost died. That's kind of fucked up. I don't really have any good coping skills, so I'm gonna like go back and use that drug again for a while until I feel better, and then I'm gonna stop. And then I did that. And this is just ever since it's just been this long process of like starting to have more trust in myself. And it's really, really cool and everything's really exciting. Anyway, I got a cat eventually, realized I couldn't take care of the cat. I love this cat. He's still with me. His name is Pico. He's my best friend. And I'm going to also be skipping over a lot of the very touching Pico stories. But if you want those, you're going to have to wait for my memoir to come out. But that's what ended up getting me off the street in the end, is I realized it was another creature that I needed to help. And I couldn't get him out of a shelter until I reached out to my dad. So I called my parents for the first time in about 2 years. And my dad came the next day to pick me up. And that was actually January 28th of 2020. And then I just started building an entirely new Brooke, kind of from scratch. I had a backpack and a cat and nothing else. I had no digital footprint because this guy had like stolen my Gmail account to try to track me and to try to track. This is showing up notifications. That was a funny one though. It's just like the little blurb at the bottom. So I had nothing. I had no digital footprint. I had no real friends. I had no job. I had nothing. So I had a blank slate. I could do whatever I wanted. I could be whoever I wanted. And my parents were kind enough to give me a place to stay while I spent a few months just, running experiments. I was like, I fixed my insomnia in like a month or two, really bad insomnia. Like figured out how to like do intuitive eating, got rid of my sweet tooth kind of accidentally just by like paying attention to what things made me salivate it was just like I was doing all this stuff for fun. And then every time one thing kind of became part of the norm, became automatic, then I would add another thing. Then I started reaching out to my old friends. Most of them just thought I was kind of insane. I had one friend, I remember I reached out to her And she's like, hold up, wait. You're telling me you were high then and you're sober now? Because I do kind of always talk at a mile a minute. And then I started writing about my experiences. And then I started publishing those in a blog, which brought me to Twitter. And then I made a whole bunch of new friends. And at one point, about a year into Twitter, and I kind of joined Twitter. Part of why I was writing is because I wanted to find people that I could talk to about this stuff, about just how, like, the kind of people where you could be like, yeah, I was homeless. And they'd be like, that's fascinating. What happened in your brain? Like, those are the kind of people I most want to be around. And I was publishing these blog posts, and it was kind of just sending them out on Facebook to some of my old friends, and they weren't really kind of like engaging in the way I was hoping. And I was like, well, I just need a wider pool. If I broadcast my thoughts enough, the world's a big place. I will find people that I can talk to about this stuff. And then I joined Twitter because somebody posted one of my blog posts there, and a bunch more people looked at it. And then I just happened to find all of these people I've been looking for this whole time. And they're also very, very smart and kind of intimidating. So I stopped writing the blog eventually. Yeah, and so then I stopped writing the blog and just wanted to hang out with these people. And eventually it was just decided it was inefficient to keep like hosting these like 15-person meetups, and everyone should just come to me, and kind of did that. At one point, somebody tweeted, when is the first in-group meetup with attendance in the thousands? And I quote tweeted that, pulled together a team. That was 2021. And within 6 months, I think we'd put on our first event, and it has sparked, people have gotten married, people have found their co-founders, people are starting to, like, when they show up at the entrance, it's called Vibe Camp, is this event that we run. Now people will start to be like, oh, I'm so glad to be home now. It is sometimes the first time people have felt like they've been around people like them. We're bringing together a lot of the people I think of as like all the one weird kid from our hometowns or whatever. And a lot of people just have never really experienced what it's like to be around other people who just felt like they couldn't quite fit in. And it's just been such an honor to like be able to do this, and such an exciting journey. And through all of this, from kind of that moment when my happiness switch flipped, I have just been kind of following what feels good in my body. An example I like to use is like a dinner party. Is for most of my life, if I didn't want to be there, but I wasn't having an actively bad time, I would just stay and I wouldn't change anything because, like, I'm fine. Fine is not good enough. That is like, there's one thing I can like hammer home from this talk is just, it's possible to be feeling so much better than fine, but you need to I guess to love yourself enough to want to pay attention to the things that feel really good, and to follow those. And if something's feeling bad for a while, and I know we all have real lives, and we all have jobs, and we all have things that feel bad sometimes, but if it's feeling bad for a really long time, that means I am either not thinking about it in the right way, not framing it in the right way, or I'm in the wrong situation. I need to change it. And I know it's hard to change those things, but we got to do it. And I'm gonna go ahead and call that there. Thank you.
Thank you so. Ooh, would help if my mic was in the right place. Thank you so much, Brooke. That is an amazing, just such an inspiring story. I am going to ask you a couple of questions. We've got a couple of comments and questions in the chat as well. But I wanted to say the thing that really strikes me about your story, about your personal story, is how much curiosity comes through there's this curiosity streak all through. Even like young Brooke was kind of going, who's happy and how do I get more happy? This is like scientific curiosity about life that you've had all through your story, from when you were in high school, when you were experimenting with drugs, when you were on the street, and then afterwards when you were like, okay, now what do I do with my life? How do I rebuild this? This curiosity all through, this openness, and this readiness for wonder, I think is something that is very much you, and something that I think is part of what when you talk about following delight, I think that curiosity might be a little bit part of that. I don't know. What do you think? I'm just, I'm just, I'm just, I'm just like telling you something about yourself. So I want to give you a chance to respond. This is how I mean,
I definitely think that's true. And I think that's been around from a pretty early age. And I wonder, sometimes I kind of go back and forth and like wonder, like, could somebody who doesn't have this kind of like long running sense of curiosity do what I did? But I also think it's like, it's important for the people who have, it's kind of like one of the roles that maybe like a lot of my friends are autists and they think a lot about social dynamics and they will go and put things into explicit words that maybe other people don't really always need to put into words, but it can kind of
Mhm.
help to view it in that way. So maybe I one of the values that I like, something that I have to offer a value maybe is thinking through this stuff, and hopefully it can be impactful for other people, even maybe if they don't haven't spent their life running around chasing all these things that I have.
Yeah, I think curiosity is one of the doors towards living intentionally, you know? And you talk about that, how fine, fine isn't enough. So to live intentionally, curiosity, I think, is one of the doors into that. We did have some lovely comments in the chat. I'm going to let you read most of them later. I'm sorry if they were a little bit distracting. We have a question from Matthias Martins. What would you say to someone who is considering using psychedelics or hard drugs to deal with the pain or a sense of being lost?
That depends entirely on which drug. Like I don't have a blanket answer to that basically. I'm happy to do this for anybody who hears this talk, like message me and I'm happy to talk
Mhm.
through them. I
Oh, I'm going to put
would
your
be
info.
extremely wary. I'm sorry.
I'm going to put your info in the chat so people can get in touch with you.
Yeah. I mean, I would be, there's a reason that things like heroin have the bad reputation that they do. I'd be very, very wary about something like that. Um, And like, people do that thought experiment sometimes of like, oh, what would you change if you could go back in time?
Hmm.
I wouldn't change a single thing. If I had to live through my entire life again, I would be really pissed off about it because a lot of it was really unpleasant. But I would do the exact same things again because the things that I have like learned from it and grown from it, I didn't even know it was possible to live the kind of life I'm living now. It is just like every day I'm just like blown away with a sense of like wonder and gratitude and it's overwhelming. And so I have a hard time like blanket telling people don't experiment with these things. Because if you can live through it and if you can like actually find your way out, I really got a lot of value out of it.
Near-death experiences, go do it. Uh, uh, you know, but it's so cool because you've got this very microcosm kind of internal experience of figuring out what gives you joy and finding out how to live in your body and how to awaken your emotions and trust yourself. But then also you've got this internet culture where you talk, and you and I have spoken many times about many different things, and Brooke speaks on many different topics, and one of them is how to create community, especially online, and how you can use this internet tool that we have that can be used for good or evil, but you can use it to find your people. And if you are feeling lost or alone or like a total weirdo in your space, we have this amazing thing. Can you talk a bit about that and the loneliness crisis and building community?
Yeah, I like to say that loneliness crisis is solved. It's just not evenly distributed yet. We've
Mm,
had the internet for a pretty short blip in terms of our species and society, and I think we're only just starting to learn kind of what we can do with it. And yeah, you're right. Like a lot of very harmful things come out of it. And for somebody who, I grew up in a small town, if I had had yeah, I think it's well, let me back up for a second. The chances that we're gonna be like born and like next door to somebody that we have this kind of like really, really high alignment with is just it's
mm,
not very likely. There's a lot of people out there. But the internet allows us to like, broadcast our thoughts, to draw people to us that think the same way. Or if we're shy, we can go listen for other people's thoughts and be like, oh yes, that's the way I think. And I think what gets lost, I think a lot of people have learned, you can go find people you have commonalities with on the internet. But I think what people often stop before the necessary next step, which you got to build lives with them in the real world.
mm-hmm,
I think one of the funny things about Vibe Camp is for the first few, I was just like, I would check Twitter every once in a while to see if people were tweeting. We all met on Twitter.
mm-hmm,
And I just like, all I would see were like a couple threads of people who were having a really bad time. Like, oh no, the event is horrible. Everything's going, everyone hates it, but it's because everyone else was having such a good time. They just left their phones in their cabins. This group of like terminally online people go for a few days and they just put their phones down because what they seek out of the internet is being around these other people. And when your needs are filled in that way, you don't really need the phones as much.
mm. Yes, what we're seeking is that sense of belonging, and that's such a beautiful segue into our next speaker. So I'm gonna thank you so much, Brooke. I'm gonna kind of comment on this a little bit, and thank you so much for being our first brave speaker, everybody. Thank you so much, Brooke, for setting the tone and starting us all off. And I think there's so many themes here that are so important. Listening to yourself, this feeling of belonging, which is going to be very relevant to our next speaker, Matthias Martins, and also just this the courage to put yourself out there. And Brooke is speaking now, but she started out just blogging, and whatever way you have to share your voice, to put yourself out there so you can find your people aren't necessarily going to find you, especially if you sit in your house and you kind of lurk, but you don't engage with people even online. They're not going to find you because they don't know you're there. So the more you can put yourself out in a safe way. Of course, don't do anything dangerous, but the more you can put yourself out there in your weird, wonderful, wacky self and find the other weirdos, because they're there, they're out there. They just might not be next door. And that's okay. We have this way of communicating now. So thank you so much, Brooke, for sharing your story. You are an inspiration to us all. Folks who are watching the replay on YouTube, please comment for Brooke. And all of the links will be in the YouTube description as well. So you can find Brooke and connect with her, because she is a community maker and this is what she does. So reach out to her and chat. She's a force to be reckoned with. Our next speaker is going to be speaking less about the internet and more about belonging, although I believe he is actually a member of Vibecamp as well, so that's pretty cool. Nice connection there. Matthias Martins is a writer and multidisciplinarian creative who specializes in creating stories that advance the plot of the universe. Born in Canada and currently living abroad in Edinburgh, UK, Matthias has spoken to people all over the world about how to unlock the power of story. His life's work is to help human beings untangle themselves from the stories that tie them in knots of doubt and enter into creative relationship with their inner storyteller, one that allows their true inner potential to unfold and find expression. Matthias is also an avid rucker, which is a weighted rucksack hiker, and you may find him exploring the many city hiking trails of Edinburgh with a weight upon his back. And I forgot to spotlight him before I introduced him, so I'm so sorry. Here is his beautiful face. Here we go. There you are. Matthias, thank you so much for being here.
Danielle, thank you for having me.
So please tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Thank you. First, I wanted to say I sympathize with the issue with the Zoom chat squares. What I tend to do, a little tip for the future speakers, is I just stare into the green light, the green light on my MacBook. That's where I'm being recorded from. And I find if I keep my gaze in that area, I'm able to stay focused on the story. So hi, folks. As Danielle said, I'm Matthias. I'm here to talk about what story means to me, which is something I've often tried to find ways how to talk about. And eventually what I realized is the thing that was blocking me from really understanding, really expressing what story means to me, is that I didn't have the essence of my story. And the reason I didn't have that is because there was a wound inside me that separated me from my own past. So I'm here to tell the story of how I healed my own story. And I'd say that begins with a feeling, and it begins with an image. And that image is of sitting around a campfire at night with friends. And it's warm, even though it's cold out beyond the edge of the fire. And you can feel the warmth, not just from the fire, but as if it's flowing from the hearts of the people around you and warming your own heart in the cold, dark night. And that's an image that's always been with me. And with some of these images, you don't know where they come from. But I think I might know where this one came from. It came from a VHS film called Wonders of God's Creation on VCR, published by Focus on the Family. And there is a scene within that where we have the ancient shepherd in Israel, and he is watching the fire. And the narrator is saying the words of Psalm 139, saying, I thank you, Lord, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. And the voice from that video was, in my mind, the voice of my grandfather. My grandfather also has this strong, brassy voice where it was often in these religious documentaries. So I was watching this movie with my family in Yukon territory, whereas my grandparents were way down south in Saskatchewan province in Canada. About a 2-hour drive if you drive through the night. So why were we up there? Was Saskatchewan not the middle of nowhere enough for my family? Well, I think there's some the truth to that question is that my family are Mennonites, and they really did go from place to place, escaping the powers that be, or the powers that were in whichever century, to eventually end up in Canada and all sorts of other places around the world, looking for a place where they could practice their religion in peace. And my father, I would say, had a similar story, because while he was born into this Mennonite community, he had his own interpretations. He was always his own man, his own boss, things out for himself. And he went to the Bible for answers. And one of the answers he found his own little differences, his own little interpretations. And one of those was that the day of rest ought to be the Sabbath. It ought to be Saturday, not Sunday, which is not a belief of Mennonites. It is a belief of Seventh-day Adventists, but not Mennonites. And I remember the way that I engaged with my father, like being in the Yukon, being in this rather cold, remote place, with the warmth of my family being the only thing protecting me from that cold. That to me, everything Dad told me about the universe, about God, about salvation, all of that was the truth. All of that was what I needed to hold on to in order to stay warm. And I had this feeling that if I were to deviate from God's light, I would be cast out. I would be cast out of the campfire and rejected from the warmth of my family. So in my mind, it was very all or nothing. So I found it hard to make sense of the fact that my parents, well, particularly my father, thought one way, and my grandparents thought of another way. So one time when I was in Saskatchewan with my grandfather, I saw him stop at a gas station and come back with a chocolate bar, and it was a Saturday. So he bought chocolate on the Sabbath. And I asked him about it. I was a bit stunned. And he paused for a moment, and his answer was, sometimes God hands down different laws to different people. So when I heard that, with my naive childhood brain, I was questioning him. I thought what he was saying is that he wasn't, he didn't take the word of God seriously, and he was trying to cover this up. And it took me a while to really understand where he was coming from, because I now believe that what he was trying to do was not protect me from being disillusioned with him, but protect me from being disillusioned with my father, or protect me from the understanding that there are differences, that I was raised in something that wasn't the same Christianity. Of course, while I appreciate that lesson, I think it took me a long time to learn that lesson for myself in my own way. And I really needed that lesson, because the sense in my mind of wanting to be right, like wanting to be on the correct path, it did dominate my childhood mind. And I remember the sermons, the way that my father expressed his understanding of the cosmos and of what happens after you die. One of the images he left me with was that God could pick you up and fling you out of the universe. so that you would fly forever in the cold and dark, unable to die, because it was your soul that was flying. And another thing he told me was that if you blaspheme against the Holy Spirit, you will not be forgiven, even though most other sins can be forgiven. That is the one that can't. And another thing he told me on a different occasion, I think, is that anyone who sins against God in their hearts is sinning in truth, because God can see your innermost thoughts. So me, thinking about this lesson, I put these things together, and I thought, if I ever think a blasphemous thought about the Holy Spirit, I'm done. That's it. I'm going to hell. So I tried not to think a blasphemous thought. And what immediately came into my head was, go to hell, God. And in the moment after that, there was this horrible sense of terror and dread. Like all of the curses that I was warned about were now on my head. They'd been activated. And then I had to think about what to do next. And I think some children in that situation would have gone to their parents about it. But I was afraid, and I thought, if I tell them, then they will know. And I can't undo that. So if they know that I am dispossessed of God's love, why would they want to keep me in their house? So I didn't tell them. I just sat with it in the privacy of my own mind, thinking, okay, I appear to be damned. What do I do next? And I reached a certain conclusion, which was, all right, if I'm damned, I'm going to do the best I can, because I haven't lost the knowledge of salvation. I've only lost access to it. And I still have the knowledge of the law and what is right. And I'm going to continue to follow it, because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. And when I die, maybe God will sort this out for me. And that, I think, was one of the early cracks in this total worldview that I was born into, and that I tried to embody in myself. So as time went by, as I got a little bit older, I did start to doubt more and more. I still tried to take my Christianity seriously, but just as I had made that decision when I was a child, that continued to be my attitude toward guilt and doubt, and that I would try to understand it for myself. And from the outside, I would try to be seen as a good boy, as a faithful boy. And I wouldn't let anyone know about my doubts. So when I was about 15, so a little bit of context here, the place that we were in was called Teslin. It is a village of about 400 people. It's a 2-hour drive from Whitehorse, which is the capital city in Yukon Territory. And Teslin does not have a high school. It does have an elementary school, but my father wanted us to be homeschooled in order so that we could be protected from whatever influence of the world there was to be found in this village of 400 people. But the decision was made that for high school, we would make the trip into the city, all four of us in our successive turn, and be educated there. And that also was a strange experience, meeting people for whom the foundation of reality and goodness was not the teachings of God. So there were people who made sense of their lives in a completely different way. And I didn't have much understanding of what that way was, but I could tell that they were different. And I could tell that at times they thought I was batty. They thought I was insane, which I was prepared for, because I was always taught that they will think you are mad if you were a person of faith. But it was still difficult to deal with. And I was facing this feeling of like, I don't want to show the side of me that gets me mocked to these new people. And I don't want to show the doubtful side of me to my family. So there was this rehearsal building up of all of these different masks I had to wear. And that continued into university. At university, it somewhat culminated in my second year at UBC in Vancouver, because I had just been admitted to a theological residence. So it was a place that was attached to the theological college. I wasn't in theology, I was in computer science, but it was a good location. And it was only available to Christians. And I got this connection through my grandfather to stay there. And I had been there maybe a week and a half dealing with my doubts. And I went for a walk and I was asking myself, I was interrogating myself, like, what do you believe? What is your relationship to Christianity? And I figured out there that, a Christian is someone who accepts Jesus as their Lord and Savior. And I had this light go on that I don't do that. Whatever my understanding of God is, it has evolved, and it no longer is about somebody named Jesus. It's some kind of abstraction. So clearly, I might still believe in God, but I'm clearly not a Christian, which was liberating, but also it drove me deeper into this sense of abandonment, the sense of lostness. Because I was at university, I was away from the influence of my family, but I still valued my family. I valued their acceptance. So now I was feeling that not only was I cursed, in some ways it was even worse, that what they believed was unintelligible to me. So I could feel this gap growing wider and wider, but I still, every time I encountered it, I felt this need to continue to avoid it, continue to have the interactions I wanted to have by controlling what I allowed them to know. And that eventually fell apart because I have a sister. And my younger sister, we would talk about a lot of things. And one of the things we would talk about was God, because she went through all the same things I did. She had all the same doubts I did. And at some point, she did broach this with me, and we did talk, and she realized too that she was not a Christian. But when she realized this, she didn't clam up about it. She didn't hide her light under a bushel. No, she told my dad. And my dad, knowing knowing who we were, knowing his kids, worked out that she'd probably learned it from me. Which is unfair because she very much worked it out for herself. I just gave her context. But when my dad found out, he told his parents. And that to me was the worst possible thing that could happen. Because my parents, I think most of us can relate, when you're growing up, your parents are the people that you push and pull with to determine who you are. And you never have a perfect, you lose the ability to see them as perfect from a pretty young age generally, but your grandparents, not so much, not always. And definitely for me, my grandparents were this warm light when my family was failing to provide a warm light. Like they were Christmas, they were gifts and candy and games and like everything that was beautiful about reading scripture. So that was the connection that to me was really sacred. I didn't want to lose. But I was in my mid-20s and the cat was out of the bag. And one year I was visiting my grandparents, and my grandmother confronted me about this and said, "Is it true that you are an atheist?" And I couldn't lie to her. I could never lie when I was asked directly. I couldn't opt into that type of life. But I stumbled through an answer that tried to reflect everything that I felt. I tried to say that I do feel a great sense of awe when I think about the universe, and my place in it and the miracle of existence. And I do feel a love that connects me to other people. But I don't see an author behind it. I don't see a willful force. So I don't believe in God. And she was quiet for a little bit. And then she said, I hope you change your mind, because I hope to see you in heaven one day. Which, to me, like, this was the confirmation of everything I had feared. That even though heaven was a place I didn't believe in, still the idea, I knew that heaven was a place that she believed in. It was real to her. And for her to remove me from that meant that I was removed from the family, or at least that's how I saw it. At least that's how it felt at the time. But my family wasn't my entire life. I was living in Vancouver. I was making my own life. I was making a life for myself. So this often stayed in the back burner for a lot of my 20s. I remember one time it didn't, was my mother. I was talking to my mother about this. Well, about a talk that I had attended where I was getting really excited about the history of the universe and why there are no aliens. And this talk was talking about the expansion of the universe, the stars flying out in all directions, the galaxies, and the activity in the universe being expressed in these gamma ray bursts that lit up the night, and they flashed and they scalded the planet so that life couldn't form, but that at some point the pace of these gamma ray bursts went down and life could exist on these planets that were quiet enough for it to be supported, and that we might be existing right on the cusp of when life can emerge in the universe. And that means that somewhere out there we have brothers and sisters who we haven't met yet on these other planets who are also just now emerging into consciousness. And my mother had a similar reaction, like to my grandmother, like she was very upset because everything I was saying contradicted the biblical narrative that my whole family believed in, that the universe was created in 7 days, 6,000 odd years ago. And she told me a story of the lunar landing, saying that they had got it wrong about how much dust was on the moon. And that showed that the world was really younger, but they tried to cover it up. So anytime I tried to share this, I came to this place of just hitting a brick wall, because I knew that I believed things that they didn't believe. And I couldn't, it seemed impossible that there could be a link from me to them. And that was kind of where I left it for a few years. And eventually what motivated me to begin to think about this, to feel this pain again, was the knowledge that my grandparents were getting older, and that I might not have a time to truly connect with them if I don't move, if I don't take action. So I will tell you about the form that action took. Last year, when I was making preparations to move from Canada to Edinburgh, where I am now, I made a point of it to visit my grandparents, because my grandfather was experiencing symptoms of progressing dementia. And moreover, I didn't know when I would have a chance to see them again. So in that setting, my family, my grandparents, my father, my older brother, who'd come with me to support me, were gathered to eat. And grandma asked who wanted to say grace. And I hadn't said grace with my family in many years. So I said grace. And I didn't say, thank you, God. I said, we are grateful. We are grateful for this meal. We are grateful for the time we have together. We are grateful to be in each other's presence. We are grateful. And once I'd said grace, and once we'd eaten, and everyone had moved on from the table except for me and Grandma. She asked me if it was still true, if I still didn't believe. And I said, yes, it was true. And I meant every word of what I said in that prayer. And what I learned from this is the story that my family believed is something that I no longer could accept. It was no longer part of me. But I had gone so long thinking that if I lose the story, I lose them. But it's not true. What I learned is that losing the story doesn't mean losing the people. Losing the people is from losing connection. But what connects us, that comes from being present, from experiencing things with them, from partaking in common experiences. And that what separates us is how we interpret those experiences. So even if we live in different worlds, we are bound by different stories, we can't understand each other intellectually, there's still a layer underneath where the truth can be found. And that is what I reached for. And I feel that I reached for it at exactly the right time, because later that same year, my grandfather did pass away. I was in Edinburgh. My father was sitting with him, and he held the phone that we were talking on up to my grandfather's ear. He couldn't speak anymore. And I said goodbye to him. And I remember thinking, like, here I am facing this great mystery, because this is someone I've loved ever since I was a child, and very soon he will be gone. So my atheism, it's not an intellectual thing. It is me taking a stand about what I see in the things that are the most intense and the most painful things that humans ever have to experience. And that's what religion is about. That's what religion unfolds from. So I haven't found all of my answers for how to deal with that fear and that hurt of loss. But I think I believe I have found what I really needed to find, which was the power of love inside of me that connects me to everyone I love, whether they understand me or not. And that's what I hope for you as well, everybody who's watching this.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much, Matthias, for sharing that. Um, just such a, I think it's such an, sorry, I was like at myself here. I think it's such an important thing for so many of us. We grow kind of apart from our families and try to find ways to belong without having to be the same, without having to be homogenous, because I think I love what you said about, and I didn't actually use these words this time, but I've heard your talk before. And you have said once that you said when you stopped uh, thinking about it and you started feeling through it, something like that. When you stopped trying to connect with your mind and you started trying to connect with your heart, that's what you said. That's when it all kind of worked out. And there's a feeling underneath, and we don't have to always have the same stories. We don't have to always have the same details. If we can connect to that love underneath, that feeling underneath, we can still belong and we can still find that warm fire feeling. So thank you so much for sharing that. If anyone has any questions, there's a million exciting comments in the chat for you to read later. Lots of grateful comments. But if anyone has any questions for Matthias, please say that now. You can also connect with him. I will put his info in the chat so you can connect with Matthias through Substack. He is there sharing his thoughts on many things, not just belonging. But as a storyteller, I think it is. It's important to know your own story. So thank you, Matthias, so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Let's take a look. Okay, great. So LJ, I believe you are available to speak next. Let's make sure you're here. There you are. I'm going to unspotlight. I have to talk while I'm doing it, otherwise I don't realize what I'm doing. To unspotlight Matthias and spotlight LJ. I'm not a boomer, I swear. Not that it would be bad if I was. There we go. I'm just a little slow sometimes. There we go. Here's LJ. I have spotlighted her, but now I'm going to read you her bio and introduce her to you all before she starts. LJ, I'm so excited for her to be here. She has a very beautiful, vulnerable story to share of her own personal experience. LJ partners with high performing moms to navigate high conflict co parenting, reconnect with their kids, and lead their lives without burning out or losing themselves. Her work guides women out of constant alert and into expectancy, grounded presence without attachment to control, resulting in restored connection at home, clearer leadership in conflict, and an integrated way of living where core essence, inner strength, parenting, and purpose work together without self-abandonment. Although LJ does specialize in working with women who are mothers, women who have children, everything that she has to say today is relevant to everybody. We're talking about relationships, we're talking about trust. This is human being stuff. So I invite you, if you're not in, if you're not a mom with kids, it's okay. This is still very much relevant to you. Every time LJ speaks, I think of something where I'm like, oh, I could definitely do that in my own self-parenting. So it's very relevant. Thank you so much for being here today, LJ. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you want to share.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for this opportunity to share and to inspire everyone that's here, including myself, not exempt from this. And I am really honored to follow Brooke and Matthias. Wonderful, wonderful shares with what you've shared so far. So thank you both. Mommy, I don't want to live with you anymore. When I heard those words, I had to put the dishes down and give my child my full attention. You see, I am a successful woman. I'm at work. I have achieved so much, and I have been following what's expected of me as a woman, as a mother, as a parent, and an employee. And here I am, hearing my child let me know that she doesn't want to live with me anymore. I've parented and protected her. I have dealt with a high conflict co-parent, continue to work and achieve. And I'm hearing this while I'm trying to hold it all together. And in these short 5 years, I had lost my mother and then my dad. And the family that I thought I could rely on, they were not available because we were all grieving the loss of our parents. Are there any others out there who have been going through some challenges that hit you like all at once? Is there anyone? Please raise your hand, hands in the chat. Okay, I see you, Melody, Wendy. Thank you guys so much for participating. And whoop, thank you for the straight up 100. I saw that. So, as a woman, what I was taught to do was to say, hey, it's not that bad, or that other women have it worse than me. And meanwhile, on the inside, there was just this massive weight of overwhelm, worry, and my confidence was shaken because I was successful at work, but at home, I'm feeling like a failure. So now, no more daily dinners, helping my children with their homework. I have more time on my hands, and I end up just laying on the couch to watch TV because I did not expect to be in this place. And one day, I heard more than just the TV. I heard the sound of anguish. And then I recognized it was me. I was finally releasing the weight, the grief from all that I felt that I was losing. Daily connection with my children, my parents. And I was just finally releasing it, letting it all out. And I took a shower. And when I stepped out, I wiped the fog of grief off the mirror. And I looked at myself and I said, Elle, this isn't where you expect it to be. But it's not as bad as what you are playing it out to be in your mind. You taught your children to use their voice, and they did. They gave you feedback. That was a gift. And in that moment, I remembered the quote from Nobel laureate Maya Angelou, where she said, if you don't like something, change it. And if you don't change it, change your attitude. And that is exactly what I did. I said, Elle, you are an open, powerful, free woman. And as that woman, you get to change your attitude around what it means to be a mother, a woman, an employee, a parent, and a co-parent. And I, through those reflections, started recognizing that I was living by other people's expectations. They weren't mine. And their expectations from society, from culture, from even ones that I inherited. Am I the only one who has had this weight of expectations put on me? All right, I see you, Melody. I see you, Wendy. Okay, nope, I am not alone. Thank you, guys. I see you, Danielle. Thank you so much. And please put comments in the chat. I appreciate you guys so much. And recognizing that those expectations are not ours, we get to do something different. I'm like, I don't want to live by someone else's expectations. I want to be who I am. What's strong in me? What are my inner strengths? And step out on those rather than allowing expectations to step on me and to hold me down from being Elle. And when I did that, I recognized, when you reflect, what are you looking into? You're looking into a mirror, right? And that was the first thing I did. I stepped out, I'm looking into this mirror and seeing me, because I had not been giving myself credit for all that I had accomplished as a woman, a mother, a parent. I went from an entry-level position at work to management in 4 years. As a mother, I endured 3 miscarriages before finally giving birth to the 2 children that I told the universe, God, that I wanted. And I stopped. Yay. So here I am receiving this feedback from my children. And I'm like, they just told me, they just shared with me something that I didn't see in myself. They told me about some blind spots. And I'm like, if my children are telling me this, what else am I missing? Because when I'm looking in the mirror, I'm just seeing the front of me, right? So I need some other people to read to help me see 360, right? So I invested in a community of other high performing women who understood my journey. And I had to step out and trust to make myself vulnerable, to open up in front of these strangers, knowing that there could totally be judgment saying, "Ooh, she must be a bad mother. Why would her children not want to live with her?" Okay, well, I stepped out anyway. And I said, okay, I'm the jar and I've got a label and I can't see my own label. So let me help you out here. This is a bottle of water. The water cannot see its label, right? And that's the same with us. We cannot see our own labels. So I allowed these women to do that for me. And they were like, hey, Elle, we see you. You have greatness on the inside of you. And we also see why and how you are hurt and you are at a space where you need some compassion, some love, because you are not alone. Another weight of expectation and judgment was lifted off of me by being in that community, being seen, and having the chance to receive additional feedback from others who did not have an agenda for me. And they read my label. And I'm like, oh, okay. So not only am I a woman, a mother, a parent, those are also labels, identity labels, right? The other identity labels I was given was we see your heart of love, connection, and compassion. We also hear you say that others have called you crazy, controlling. And we know that that's not your intent and that's not your heart, but they labeled you that way for whatever reason they did. But we want to help you remove those identity labels from yourself and stand in being open and powerful as you are. And that felt so freeing. And that felt good to reflect on that, to say, I can release the judgmental things that have been said about me. I can release expectations that I inherited from others that did not serve me. And so I needed to put it all together. That's where the harmony comes in. To harmonize my reflections, to harmonize the reading of my label. That's what I get to do next, right? And that's what I did. And when we think of harmony, we can think of music, right? And I want to bring us into the imagery of an orchestra. And we know an orchestra has 4 parts. I'm only going to talk about 3 today. Woodwinds, strings, and percussion. And who leads the orchestra? Anybody want to say that for me? Who leads the orchestra? Put it in the chat. Anybody? Oh, yep. Thank you, Steph. The conductor. And as we harmonize, who gets to do the harmonizing? The conductor, right? So I choose harmony over balance. Because let's think about balance. When we think about balance on a scale, like the scale of justice, we see the two sides, right? And in order for the sides to balance, something has to be removed or something has to be placed on in order for balance to occur. But can you really take something off when you are in the role of mother or parent? Can you take something off as an employee? Yes, no? Can you? No. All right, good. I'm not alone on that. I appreciate you guys for playing. So, no, you cannot. So, harmony is the more appropriate term. And when we harmonize in thinking about the orchestra and the parts of it, let's say the woodwinds, that's you in your gender role, male, female, man, woman. Then the strings, that is you in your role as parent. You are the bow and your child is the instrument. So you're the bow and your child's the violin, right? For the strings. And then for percussion, that's the other roles of your life, whether you are working or co-parenting, parenting with another, that's the rhythm of life. So that always is going on in the background. And in this symphony that you are conducting as the conductor of your own life, the leader of your life, who is harmonizing what is expected of you rather than expectations, and bringing in the feedback of your blind spots and being able to mature in those places where growth is needed and strengthening those places that you have grown in already. As the conductor of your life, you're bringing it all together, right? And in the symphony, we know that there are times where you can hear the strings louder than anything else. But the drums are still, percussion is still playing, your woodwinds are still going. But right now, your parent time is needed. And as you are parenting, you are focused, and that's more intensified right there. And because that's where your attention is. That's where your baton is like, go, parent, go ahead. That's where it is right there, right? And then when that part of your life is at a place of rest, you're like, okay, thank you. Strings, you're still playing. Everything is now harmonizing still together, nothing more intense than the next. But then the next day you got to go to work. So here come the percussions and you hear that more. So that is what I mean by harmonizing our lives. And as we're in that harmony and conducting our lives, sometimes we may feel this shadow of expectation trying to creep up on us and tell us how to conduct our symphony, right? And what we get to do to that shadow of expectations that are not ours, we get to say, no, I'm going to step out of that shadow of expectation and I'm going to step into expect and see. Expectancy, right? And with expectancy, what is the difference? The difference is, as the conductor of your life, you are making the best decisions that you know in the moment. You are no longer saying, hey, I want to make sure that I don't have the experience of my parents and I don't pass on to my children what was done to me. you're no longer there. Then you're also not anticipating the future saying, oh, if I don't make this decision, if I make this decision, I'm going to prevent this from happening. Let me defend against this and let me defend against that. Nope. You're no longer anticipating the future. You're going to bring that right back here too. And you are going to be in the present. And you are going to make decisions from this present moment with what you know right now. And you will expect a result from that decision. But what you're going to do is you're going to wait and see what happens. Because with expectancy, you are standing in possibility rather than predictability. You are standing in the wonderful, unknown, uncertainty rather than certainty. And with that expectancy, there's so many choices that you can experiment with. And it's not a mistake. So let's think about experimentation. 3M. When someone was trying to produce a glue that could stick beyond all other, they accidentally created Post-its. And let's think about that. Post-its are a wonderful invention because I use them all the time, reminding my children what to do and what not to do. That's what the beautiful thing of Post-its are for. So as we are standing in expectancy and experimenting with life, we get to find out what's possible and saying, hey, I made that choice from what I knew. What can I learn from it? How can I use it in the future? And that's the beauty of what we are doing when we stand in the mirror and we harmonize and get clear with ourselves on what it is that we are doing. And then with allowing others to read our jar, that helps to calm us down, to say, hey, I'm not in this alone. There's other people who are helping me with my blind spots. And I can show up as me, as Matthias, as Brooke, as Wendy, as Alex, as Steph. I can show up as me. And we get to harmonize all of that together as the conductors of our lives. And we stand in the possibility of expectancy to experiment and see what is possible. So right now, I want to say thank you for listening, participating, and sharing with me in the chat. I'm really going to embrace what I'm already anticipating, all the loveliness that you've put in there and any questions as well. I look forward to reading that chat. And what I would love to offer you is, as my gift, is the Calm and Clarity Toolkit. And that will be placed in the chat for you. And the purpose of that toolkit is to give you resources to reflect on yourself, to look at yourself in the mirror. And then it also gives you tools to support you in finding a community that can read your label. And you take all of that, you harmonize it together so that you can shift the energy in your home, just as I did. Because as I was my first client, so to speak, I did just that. I'm sharing with you what I did. And the results of that, let me tell you, instead of being overwhelmed and exhausted trying to force a connection with my children, I was able to change the environment in my home. And then I heard my children tell me, Mommy, you went to sleep with a smile on your face. Mommy, hey, I'm talking to this guy. Wait, you're voluntarily telling me you're talking to a boy? And she knows my stance on that, but she trusted me enough because I shifted the environment in my home, right? Then my youngest daughter was telling me about manga, manhwa, Stranger Things. And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. Can you use plain English? And she did. And she let me in because again, I opened the door. And being that open, powerful, free person myself, my children were able to do the same thing. And I binge watched over the Christmas break Stranger Things. And I must tell you, if you don't have children and to connect with, you don't have to watch it. But but I learned so much from being uncomfortable. I stepped into discomfort in order to connect with my children. And it was freeing. Okay. So, as that link is in the chat, please let me know that it works. Okay, it works. Thank you. I invite you to click on that link and connect with me, and I will be able to share more with you and invite you to share more with me because I have learned that this, in relationships and in connecting with others, it's a give receive, not a give and take. And so for so long, I've thought like, hey, I've got to give, and others are just taking from me. But by doing this work, I'm like, no, I want to create a give receive relationship. And that's exactly what I did. I gave my children the space to be who they be, right? Period. And they received it. And then they gave to me who they be. And I received it. So calm and the clarity, oh, good heavens, what in the world? The Calm and Clear Clarity Toolkit link is in the chat. Please click on that and take that toolkit and reflect on yourself. Allow others to read your jar. You be the conductor of your life. And Danielle, again, thank you. Thank you for this space of being able to share with others.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing, LJ. Such a beautiful, strong story. I just makes me cry every time. I've heard it many times. I cry every time. It's so powerful the way, by figuring out your own identity labels and kind of allowing that to not be so personal, that feedback. You gave such a gift to your children because you're figuring out what people are expecting from you. And so you're not suddenly not putting that on them anymore, allowing them to figure out themselves and creating that space for them to come to you. It's such a huge gift. And I think a lot of, not that it's a bad, well, it's a very natural thing, I think, for parents to confuse themselves with their children because obviously there's so much overlap. And especially
Yeah.
when they're young, there's more overlap. And as they grow, it has to change. And I think that gift that you gave them of acknowledging the feedback and doing the work on yourself, they are getting so much out of that. And I personally love Stranger Things, but I can totally understand that it's not for everybody. But that you see that as an investment, it's not a sacrifice, it's an
Right.
investment in your relationship with your children. It's such a beautiful, you've got such a beautiful spin on it. And it not everyone sees relationships that way. And I think we can take this to our parent-child relationships. We can take
Yes.
this to our loved, like any sort of loved ones, really. This is so important because whenever we're close to someone, that confusion of self can happen and the confusion of expectations can happen. So thank you so much, LJ. Did anyone have any questions for LJ? Thank you for the very generous gift. I really recommend everyone's got a link to connect with them in some way, but some of them are gifts and some of them are just contact information.
Hey,
Um,
Greg. See you soon.
yeah.
Thanks for being here.
And
And just to
yeah,
let you know, I actually like Stranger Things. After I got beyond what was in there, the shock of it all, I really have enjoyed watching Stranger Things with my children because I've been learning so much
I love
from
it.
it. There's more in there than just the show.
That's true. It's more than just sometimes you see the gore from the outside, but there's so much more in there. Wendy, you have a question. I'm going to bring you up. Wendy, you had a question for LJ.
Yes.
Hey, LJ, there's so much I could say about your talk, which is freaking amazing.
Thank
But my
you.
question for you, Al, is when you talked about the group of women that were so supportive. We talk a lot about community, which though you didn't use that word, it is a community of women that sees us. And I'm not sure, is that a public group of women, a work group of women? I'm interested to find a group that could provide that for me.
I don't know, LJ, if you're not comfortable sharing this in public, because this is going out this is in
Yeah.
public. If you'd rather just message Wendy, that might be a better.
Okay,
But
all right.
great question.
It
But
is.
just if you don't want to make that information public, you can just tell Wendy
Yep.
Yeah,
on the
We
side.
we get to talk about that on the side, please. And it is a phenomenal question because community is very important. And there was definitely multiple communities that I was a part of that read my label as well. So
okay.
I will leave it right there. But yes, community is very important, and that's also part of my toolkit. So thank you for that question.
And you two can connect afterwards and chat about it.
Yes, we
So
can.
with that, I'm not actually going to unspotlight LJ, but I am going to spotlight all of our speakers. What? Because it is time for the panel. So let's see if I can figure this out. um, Here we go. Brooke, are you available? I see that your camera's not on. Did you take this time to run away to the washroom, or I'll wait for Brooke to turn on her camera. Oh, there she is. She's back. Excellent. I'm gonna bring you on as well. Oh my goodness, look at all these people.
Hmm.
Look at all these beautiful faces. So speakers, you can unmute yourselves. I have some questions for you. Also, if anyone in attendance right now has questions for our speakers, please throw them in the chat and I'll ask a question of mine and then I'll ask a question of yours so we can kind of do that in a way that makes sense. I just wanted to bring these wonderful people together, talk about an amazing community. These folks have been supporting each other as we get ready for this event, and it has been so beautiful to watch them all grow together. What I first want to ask them, because this is very much an experiment. You are all in different places in your speaking journeys. So my very first question, and I think the easiest way is just we'll go in speaker order. So we'll go Brooke, Matthias, LJ, Melody, Wendy, Alex each time, just to make it so we don't have to think about who's going to speak next. My first question is, where are you at in your journey as a speaker? Are you just beginning? Are you a seasoned speaker? Have you taken a break? where are you at when it comes to public speaking, just so that the audience can know, because I think everyone watching is kind of going, wow, these guys are all amazing. So I'd love to know where you are all at in your speaking journey. Brooke, you're first.
I am, yeah, kind of at the beginning. Danielle and I have been working together for like a year and a half now, something like
On and
that.
off.
And this woman is endlessly patient. We started out working on a lot of technique things and then realized at some point what I need most is to I run away. I have actually run off the stage a couple of times. I get very, very nervous, even at our rehearsal. Our little dress rehearsal the other day, my face was bright red, stumbling over my words, freezing a lot. She's just been really wonderful with helping me kind of like get through. And I've always just been nervous. I was in a like a theater group when I was young kid, and I remember once afterwards somebody came up to me, oh, you did such a good job, and I said, you didn't see me shaking, and they were like, well, we thought that was part of your character. So we have a this is a lifelong block of mine, and I am really thrilled that I have somebody who's just wonderful and supportive to help me through this. Danielle
And
is.
you have so many more speeches ahead of you, Brooke. You're going to be sharing the story all over the place. I can tell. She's like, no, I want to run away. Matthias, where are you at in your speaking journey?
Oh, I would have to, Brooke, your story reminded me of an anecdote about Patrick Stewart, where when he was insecure about going bald, he wore a toupee and he would wear it to interviews. And he tells the story about how he was doing a line read for one of these, what's the word? Not interview, tryouts, I
Audition.
guess.
Audition.
Audition. Thank
There we
you.
go.
Audition. But he's so nervous and he's so focused on the words that he's lost track of his hands, and one of his hands goes up to his toupee and takes it off. And only once he's done his
Oh,
rehearsal does he realize what he's done. So then he's so embarrassed. But the guy says, no, do that again. No, like that, where you
comedy
took the
gold.
toupee off of your head. That's the rule of improv. Anything can be part of the show if you make it. But to answer your question, I think, Danielle, you've known me for a long time. I don't do anything consistently, but I think I can say that I've been working on my speaking for about 10 years, and that is thanks to you. And that started not really with an interest in giving talks or speaking, but with just having more access to my voice, being better at singing. But I found through that, like, this huge emotional world that I was cut off from and didn't even realize it. Like, that's very much a part of my story too. And once that opened up, I was so excited by like what it felt like to share and to connect with people through speaking that I just kept coming back to it.
Yeah, you take breaks, but you come back. And it's not necessarily something that's, because I know that you got a computer science degree. It's not necessarily something that comes naturally to our beautiful computer nerd folks. But it is still a human thing,
No.
and it can be unlocked. LJ, where are you at in your speaking journey?
Okay, I believe I've been working with you, Danielle, probably less than a year, or has
Since
it been a
May,
year?
almost
May.
9 months.
Okay, yeah. Baby's being born. Okay, so anyways, I have thoroughly enjoyed working with Danielle in my progress, my maturity of being a public speaker. Like Matthias, I work you can call me a computer nerd. I'm a programmer, so, and a former accountant. So I've been in my head a lot. So standing in front of people talking is not all the way new because my mom made me do it in front of church, at church, but the way in which Danielle is supporting me in unlocking the connection to my emotions, being able to stand on stage and talk about something that heavy and make it through it without shedding tears and things like that, but leaning in to the emotion of it all and bringing it with me. I've grown so much. And as I said, I couldn't do it by myself. I had Danielle reading my labels, giving me that feedback that I needed. And just, I don't know. I'm without words to express how pivotal it has been to work with Danielle. She is not my first speaking coach, but she is the one that has helped me put everything together that I've learned from my other coaches and taken it beyond, because she's allowing me not to just be in my head, but use my whole body. So thank you.
Also a theme of everyone who's talking. Just embodiment is also a theme. There's all these beautiful themes: curiosity and embodiment and community. Oh, I love it. So exciting. So the next three speakers you haven't heard from yet, but they're going to speak after the Q&A. So Melody, Owen, where are you at in your speaking journey?
So I've been working with you for a very long time, and I'll just give people a little bit of context. In university, I would go into full panic trying to speak. But then I was working for Oxford University Press down in South America, and that meant I had to go do keynotes. They'd fly me to Bolivia and I'd do a keynote. They'd fly me to Chile. I'd speak there in front of all these people. And I would get up, I would speak, I would walk off stage and I had no idea what I'd said. My speaking experience back then was just to completely black out and have no idea what I said or what I experienced in my body, what came out of my mouth. And so, and then I went into teaching at a college here in Canada, and teaching was fine, but I really didn't want to be public speaking again. Teaching was my limit. And Danielle, I'm going to tell you, she very sneakily pulled me in, and she got me out of my teacher voice. And then Danielle and I she directed a solo show. So I wrote a solo show. I've performed a solo show. I hated the camera. I'm now on YouTube. I'm telling you, Danielle, you work with Danielle. She'll pull you in. But I'm grateful she did, because yes, we've been working with each other for over a decade. We've produced shows together. She's helped me start up a YouTube channel. I have a podcast. I speak. And so it's been a wonderful journey. So I'm just kidding about her pulling in. Yes, she will. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
We have a follow-up question, Melody, in Spanish or English?
I speak both. Yo hablo
No, when you were
español.
doing keynotes. What
In
language were you
English,
doing them?
because I work in the English publishing world, and so most of my keynotes were in English. I did sometimes speak in Spanish. I do speak both languages, but most of my keynotes were in English because I was speaking to English teachers. So the idea was that they would, it was a great way for them to practice, to be able to interact with me as well. So yeah, in English.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Melody. Next up, we have Wendy. Where are you at in your speaking journey?
We don't hear you, Danielle. Oh, there we go.
I don't know what happened. My connection, like my soul, is unstable. My emotional state and my connection, both unstable. I'm plugged in. I don't know what else to do. Wendy, my dear, where are you at in your speaker journey?
I just want to say, Danielle, but you're so stable in your helping of others. I will say that. So I've been working with Danielle on and off over a few years. I would say that I'm, what's the word? Quite an experienced speaker, but what I want to share with you is how I started out, briefly, hopefully. But I started out with Toastmasters Club many, many years ago, and Toastmaster Club is amazing. I would recommend it to everyone. But how I used it was I learned to script. Not everyone does, but I learned to script, and I leaned into that scripting like ever. and then plus I speak in spiritual centers and I teach. But where Danielle has helped me most, and we're not done yet, Danielle, but
No.
where you've helped me most is she learned me to ditch the notes. I remember the first time, as a matter of fact, Melody was in that group. The first time she said, "No, Wendy, no notes." And I freaked right out. And then, but of course I had to. Um, but it was the first time I felt free. Like I actually had thoughts and words that came out of my mouth that made sense to Melody. Like, I just have to say, oh my God, I would have never imagined it on my own. Speaking of community, I would have never imagined it on my own. So it has really helped me to be able to have my own thoughts, even though I still at times, definitely more than at times, have my own notes because at this point it's security. But I want to tell you, I am most confident when I'm speaking someone else's work. And where I'm going to be getting Danielle's help is to feel confident creating and giving my own work so that when I'm speaking from what comes from me, I can be on stage. I can speak up and trust that the words will be there and that it will make sense. And so I'm just so grateful for you, Danielle, and what everyone else is showing here today. Thank you.
Another theme, self-trust, is coming through. And Alex, can you tell us a little bit about where you are in your speaking journey?
Yes, I would love to. I'm still quite a bit early. It's been less than a year that I've been working with Danielle, and it's really even that short time, things have really shifted in kind of this speaking trajectory. I originally started working with Danielle primarily. What I really saw that Danielle could help me with was more on a personal level of figuring out how to speak and find my true voice because I really felt like in the past always someone very socially anxious, never really felt like I was speaking from that true voice, but I didn't really know how to find it. It felt like something, well, that's just how it is. I don't know. I'm just a socially anxious person and kind of put that down. And speaking with Danielle really helped me kind of realize that that is something that I could work on and find and get support in finding. And that was the primary thing that I wanted to work with Danielle on. But then in my business and just with speaking more in general, it didn't take long to realize that like, oh, this is actually just kind of fun. And now, Danielle really does just pull you in, and suddenly it's like, oh, there are all these other things that I can do with these skills, and it can just be fun to speak once you really learn how to tap into sharing these things that you care about. And now I went from just trying to do it mostly personally while also still getting a benefit in my business of being able to network better and all these things. It's shifted beyond that of like, well, what else can I do with this? Can I host workshops? Can I, find other topics to speak about? And it's been exciting to just follow that and just kind of see where things go once you start to feel more confident in your voice.
I love it. I love how, you know, that power of community, we're all working separately, but we also always come together. And the way that you all have supported each other and the way that it's that kind of rising tide lifts all boats. You're all completely different experience levels and, the amount of time and the amount of gigs you've done and the types of gigs you've done and all that kind of stuff. But somehow when a group comes together, they all lift each other. It's so beautiful. I have one more question, and then we are going to go to our next speaker, which is going to be Melody Owen. But I have one more question before we do that, and that is, this has been a very particular process working on this specific event. It was an experiment. I wanted to prove to the world that no one needs a script to speak, and so I worked these wonderful speakers were very generous with their trust with me to take them through my process of completely improvising. So everything that they've been saying today, it's improvised within a specific structure. It's not that it's not winging it. That's not the same. But there's a very specific way of improvising that we've been doing to keep the talks flexible and fun and fresh. And so I'd love to hear from each of you. How has this process been compared to other ways that I know Wendy kind of touched on learning to script, but other ways you've prepared? Has this been different? Has this been the same? What's what's this process been like for you for this particular event, this way of speaking? And actually, because Melody's going to be our next speaker, we're going to go in reverse speaker order just to throw you all completely off. So we're going to start with Alex, just so that Melody gets a little bit of a break before her speech.
So yeah, that is another skill I did not expect to really be able to develop. For myself, it felt like that was tied to innate charisma. And I always felt like it was definitely a label I put on myself of like, I am not a charismatic person, and so I am bad at speaking off the cuff. And Danielle really helped me to kind of break that identity a little bit and really understand that it is something it's a skill that can be developed, that anyone can learn. And I really have started to feel more confident in that. It's definitely still been a process for myself of having that confidence to just tap into yourself personally and just breathe and kind of let things flow. There is still very much a process to that I'm learning, but I really have gotten so much more comfortable with showing up and just kind of seeing what happens. And it's really been a big shift for me because in the past, I didn't have a huge issue with speaking in public if I had a script because it's like, well, it's right here. I just got to read it or I got to memorize it and it'll be okay. But anytime it was a shift of like speaking off the cuff, that's when my anxiety would really come in and it's like, I don't know what to say. I stopped breathing. It just really was something that was so long that I dealt with that it just kind of felt innate. But really learning how to be able to just tap into yourself and your passions and just kind of breathe through the barriers that naturally come up and just let things flow has been really incredible to learn how to navigate.
Oh, yay. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much, Alex. Wendy, you are next. How has this particular process been different from, or has it been different from the way you've done things before?
Gosh, it's definitely different, as I mentioned about the scripting part. And Alex, in her share, reminded me that when I joined Toastmasters, we didn't talk about breathing. We didn't talk about the body. We didn't talk about anything like that. I just thought it was all up here, which is what I thought for years and years and years. And, I'd be lying to you if I said I don't feel nervous about not having a script, even though I need to remember I'm doing it now. But, it's doable. What I'm saying is with support like yourself, support like others, just that support, it makes all the difference. If to believe it's not going to be scary at times is unrealistic. There's a part of me, just to say, that thinks that I should just be able to go from this to that, but that's not the way it works. So doing is knowing. And remembering. So I'm grateful for all that I'm learning and doing now.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Melody Owen, how has this process been different from the way that or has it been different from the way that you've spoken so much? How has this process been?
I actually want to go back to something Alex said about memorization. Because what used to feel safe was memorizing every word. And I know that a lot of people believe in that, the safety of memorization. But what I now know is that when people are memorizing and they forget something, that's when they blank out, that's when they stumble, that's when they're standing on stage, deer in headlights. And so memorizing, and then that's when they're robotic. So memorizing actually leads to more pain for a speaker than improvising does. And so when Danielle says improvising, I just wanted to say what I love about this is, I've been in the publishing world decades. I know what I'm talking about. I don't, I may not know the current stats in my memory, and it's okay if I have them somewhere or a bullet point with that. but I know I know what I'm talking about. And I remember once saying to Danielle, watch this person. They speak for an hour and it's so structured and they're not having any notes. And how do they do that? It looks so good. And so now that, that's what I am doing with Danielle, and it has changed. I'm not afraid of blanking out. I'm not a deer in the headlights. I'm not choreographing how my hands are moving. I'm trusting my body to do what fits what I'm saying at that moment. And I'm trusting my expertise and my personality to just let shine whatever's going to come. And there's no afterwards, oh, I forgot to say that. Oh, I forgot to say this. Whatever needed to be said at that time during that talk in that place, that's what happened. And I trust that.
Oh, so freeing. Thank you so much, Melody. And Melody, if you do need to go off camera, because you are going to be speaking next, if you need to just take a minute to breathe or grab some water, we totally understand. Going backwards, I believe it's LJ. How is this different? Well, how's this process been? That's a better question. How's this process been for you? You're on mute, love. We all do it. We all do it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I was saying, well, I'm not a fan of processes, really. Certain processes that I because I like being in control. I like what's predictable and what's certain, right? But in being with Danielle and in this process, I've had to trust it, trust the process. And what Danielle has done is support me in knowing, and I wrote notes, so forgive me for this. Um, in practicing, because even practicing is a skill. Because I hated to practice. My mom would tell me to practice, and my dad would say to me, "You practice the way you play." You play the way you practice. So Danielle created that environment where she's like, hey, we're on stage, you're doing this thing. It's practice, but pretend it's not, almost like, and we would do things with repetition, and repetition helped to get it into my body. So with it in my body, who cares about a script? I've been saying this over and over again. And it is in that it was a structure that allowed me to flow. So it's what's necessary. Like as parents, we create a structure and we allow our children to flow in it. Danielle created a structure and we are able to flow within that structure and feel it. And one of the things that was like a big aha for me is the beauty of the pause. Because Danielle would say, if we're talking and talking and talking, and then we run out of breath and we feel like we don't know where we're going to go, just pause and breathe. And then you'll get back in the flow. And that was so true because I did it today.
Case in point.
It was great. So being in that possibility and the experimentation that happens when we are practicing with Danielle and having practice labs with each other to be able to give each other that feedback in that safe place as well. And breathing is important. Danielle, I didn't know I could fill my body with air the way she taught me to fill my body with air. And to find my floating ribs and the fricative breath is like, oh, freaking awesome. So it is just wonderful to be here. And this process has been life-giving for me to get out of my own way, to feel what I feel and bring those feelings into what I am saying, to have my big personality that I have, according to Danielle. I don't believe it though. Um, and she gave me wonderful feedback in letting me know that she shared with me my progress. And I don't know, like Danielle is so gifted in meeting us where we are and letting us know what we need to work on at whatever particular time. And I like to be ahead of the game. And she was like, no, well, next time we'll do that. And I was like, no, why not now? But I have to trust my coach. She's just so awesome with it all. And I'm so grateful, Danielle, for your humanity, for your way of connecting with us where we are, creating the structure and the flow. So this process for me has been fantastic.
Thank you, LJ. It just reminded me of something. I don't know if anyone knows the pianist and the comedian Tim Minchin, but he was interviewed on morning television, and someone asked, like kids were writing in and asking questions, and he's a famous pianist, and he wrote and directed and produced Matilda the musical, and someone wrote in and said, how many hours a day do you practice piano? And his answer was, I never practice. And I was like, oh no, he's going to tell these kids that it's all just innate talent or whatever. And he said, no, I never practice. I just play around all day on the piano. And I just love that. It's not rehearsal. It's not this obligation thing. He's just doing what he loves and getting better at it over and over by doing it over and over again. And he says, I have no idea. I just play around all day on the piano. And I just thought that was the most beautiful thing. So as speakers, we need to play around all day too. Two more to answer this question, and then we're going to move to Melody Owen. Matthias, what was this process like for you?
Yeah, it was I think compared to how we've worked together before, I've learned to be pretty have that jazzy feel, but conversant in like being on stage, so to speak, with something to talk about. And I figured out as I go. I don't necessarily need to know how I'm getting there exactly. And I'm usually pretty comfortable in that state. So there's a couple of times that I've really tried to like nail down and like do a talk and have it recorded, but I tend to be much more on the other side. So I really liked, yeah, similar to what LJ was saying, like the ease and flow of this experience as we rehearsed it, because there was the sense that I still had that freedom. I didn't feel at all hemmed in terms of what I was doing. Like I had to make a choice, then I have to commit to it. I do something else, then I have to like go back and be like, oh, okay, I guess that's not how I want the talk to work. It's like just finding a couple of important like pivot points, like the things that really make it clear what I'm trying to get across. And Danielle helped me through every step of that. Like I didn't know what this was going to look like before talking to her about it. And the thing about the pauses, you don't have to go in sequence if you don't know, like if there's too many details in your timeline, you can just tell a story and then pause and then pick up somewhere else. It's like, okay, now I get it. So that's what it was like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthias. And Brooke, what was this process like for you?
It was very gentle and patient, which is kind of what I need. I think I'm realizing, or well, also through Danielle, that I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I think I'm always like, oh, I need to prepare more. I need to prepare more, and I think actually what I need to do is like learn to breathe and calm down, and that like I'm just telling my own story. It's like there are no like statistics I need to memorize or facts I need. Like I literally, it's all in my head already, and it's just like getting out of my own way. There's one talk that I gave before working with Danielle that was like, it was a lot of people saw it. It was like 1,000+ people saw it, and I spent weeks doing nothing but like freaking out about this thing, and I made it through it. I am not able to watch it again though, because I'm just like, I can hear my voice quavering and how quickly I'm breathing. And if I can learn how to do that without freaking out for several weeks beforehand, would be awesome. And I feel like I'm on the path to that, and that's really exciting. So appreciate you.
Yay. Yeah, it's lived experience. If we can just speak, if we can always speak from lived experience, that's it's a beautiful gift. Thank you all so much for sharing what it was like to do this and be in this experience. This was very much an experiment, and I appreciate everyone listening about it. It's been so much fun with everybody. We are going to move on to our next speaker, so I'm going to figure out how to unspotlight everybody. One moment, please. Our next speaker is Melody Owen. And I'm going to tell you about her in 1 second. But first, I'm going to remove all these spotlights so that people aren't feeling too awkward. Bye. Okay, great. Fantastic. So we're going to be talking a bit more about fear later when Wendy and I chat. But right now, well, this is also about fear and about hard things. Life can be tough sometimes. And Melody's going to tell us how she navigates that. Melody is the founder of Nutritious Truth Publishing, where she helps professionals, especially doctors, academics, industry leaders, transform complex expertise into accessible, high impact nonfiction books. With a background in linguistics, publishing, and developmental editing, she guides authors from messy drafts to clear, compelling manuscripts that educate, inspire, and connect. As a speaker, Melody explores how we can succeed at hard things by turning them into games, using motivation, structure, and play to tackle ambitious goals in 2026 and beyond. Her work is driven by a single mission: creating books and lives that nourish the mind and leave a lasting legacy. Melody, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Oh, we're just waiting for that PowerPoint to come up. If it decides to come up, we'll see if it does. Maybe not. Maybe that's not what's happening today.
It should happen.
It should. We will see.
Do you want to email me your? Do you want us to close it and try it again? Close it
Yeah,
and try
we
it
can do
again.
that.
Close it and try it again.
We can do that.
There was no reason for this not to be working. It was working in the rehearsal.
It was. And here's one of the things when you're a speaker, right? Guess what? Anything can happen anytime. No, it's not working today. So
Okay.
we
Send
are
me
going to
send me your slides, and everyone who's
Okay.
here, I will email you out the slides. And also in the replay, we can just put the slides. We can just put the slides up in the replay. I'm so sorry, Melody, but you're
no,
right. This
don't
is the thing. This is why we learn to be
don't
flexible
worry.
as speakers.
You have to be flexible as speakers because, and this is a really good lesson. This is something that Danielle helps us deal with. It's like, no need to panic. You just keep going. So, Steph said something about play. Somebody said about play resonated with Steph. Steph just went play in the comments, and I love that, Steph. If you love to play, you're in the right place because we are going to be talking about play right now. So, one thing I believe, and this comes from, I kind of grew up in a world where, I was taught life was a struggle and you had to do the hard things. And I don't know if anyone else grew up in a world like that, but I grew up in a world where life was a struggle and you were supposed to do the hard things. And that's how you get ahead. You work hard, you put your head down. There wasn't a lot of time for play. But as a child, I played anyways, of course. And I've come to decide that we need a lot more play in our lives. And I think that really started when I was hiking in the summer of 2023. I hiked up in the Yukon. Matthias was talking about the Yukon. Hiked up in the Yukon, and I went to a park called Tombstone Park. Very telling. Tombstone Park is in the middle of nowhere. It is an incredibly beautiful, vast, untouched nature. It's there, you bump into marmots and grizzly bears and all the other animals. You're there, so you have to be really prepared for what you're doing. And there are miles and miles and miles of no cars, no, I'll tell you what structures they have. The only structures they have where I was were the outhouses. Those were the structures that we had. So think of this vast, beautiful mountains, valleys, and there I am hiking, and underfoot are, rocks and gravel and sometimes clear paths. Well, on probably the fourth day in, I was walking across a boulder field. Now, if you're at your desk, look down at your desk and think, can I imagine a rock that big? Can I imagine a rock that big? So I was crossing a boulder field that had rocks as big as our desks. And as I was crossing, I took this one step and I looked up and I could see the lake, I could see the outhouse, and I could see dinner was just on its way. So I turned back and I took a step, and all of a sudden, whoosh, I was no longer on my feet. I fell into the boulder field. Somehow my foot got caught, and me and my 40-pound backpack started falling and spinning and falling and spinning. And I heard crack, 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 pop, 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 crack, crack, crack. And I landed with a thump. And I just lay there for a minute. And in my brain, I thought, I've broken my leg. And out loud of my mouth, out loud came, and I'm going to say this nicely, but what I said was, I broke my effing leg. I was mad. I was so mad that all of a sudden this beautiful hike had come to an end because I had somehow taken a wrong step and broken my leg. I was so mad. So of course, then you get mad, and then you get practical. So they wrapped me up in an emergency blanket. So I looked, from space, I looked like like a small alien ship on this large rock. They used our satellite phone to call for help. Now, remember, we're in the Yukon, and, if you have questions, ask Matthias what it's like. There was no car in to where I was. There was only a helicopter, which we hoped would arrive in time before darkness so they could get me out before darkness, because if not, I was hanging there. So while I was waiting, and I'll get Danielle to send some photos so you can see, I took some photographs from where I was while I was lying there for 5 hours. What does one do, right? You take photographs. So I was lying there for 5 hours. The emergency doctor, the paramedic, the helicopter showed up. They shoved me in, and off I went to this tiny little village with a little medical center with 2 beds, and I was in one of them. They took an x-ray and looked at that and thought, whoof, nothing we can do for you here. You need major surgery. So the very next day, they packed me up again, put me in an airplane, and they flew me off to Whitehorse, where Matthias went to high school. And there they have a beautiful hospital that Matthias has actually worked at. See all these wonderful connections we have? I love this world. We're always connected to someone somehow, right? I love it. So took me off to Whitehorse Hospital, where this wonderful doctor did reconstructive surgery on my leg. And when I was ready, they flew me home. And I just sat for weeks until I was ready for therapy. And when I was ready for therapy, I did months of therapy in order to walk again. I only thought I was ever going to learn to walk once, but for some of us, we have to learn to walk twice. It's just the way life is. Hard, right? There's going to be struggle. It is true. There is going to be struggle. When I was finished therapy, I started thinking I can hike again, and I can play volleyball, and I can do all these things that I love to do. But then I found out that even walking on the sidewalk was painful. Any impact, I couldn't no longer hike down a mountain without extreme pain. I couldn't walk quickly, or I couldn't have a lot of impact on my leg. And it really threw my life for a loop. I was angry. I was sad. I was depressed. It struck my core, because I'd always thought of myself as an outdoors person. And if every time I go outdoors, even just to walk on the sidewalk, I was in pain, it took that piece of my life away. And it got really, really hard. And for a little while, I didn't even look for answers. You ever get into that hopelessness? But then I found that little bit of hope, and I started looking for answers. And I came across this woman, Jane McGonigal. She was a PhD, smart woman, and she was a gamer. and she had a concussion and she was struggling. And then she thought, you know, I love games. What if I turn my healing into a game? And that's what she did. So I read about her journey, I read about other people's journey, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to turn my healing into a game. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. We're going to talk about how to take whatever you want in your life, whether it's a goal for 2026, whether it's a 10-year goal, whatever it is, you're saving for a house, you're healing, you want that job, you just, better relationships, whatever you want. How do we bring more play into that? How do we bring more fun into that? How do we turn it into a game so that we can deal? Because struggle will happen. It is true. My parents weren't wrong. It'll happen. I've just learned I don't have to live in that struggle. I can turn that struggle into play. So we're going to start with a win, that big win. We're going to call that the epic win. That one thing you want, that big one thing you want in life or in 2026 or whatever it happens to be. And so for me, it was being able to hike again, being able to carry weight on my back and hike. That was my epic win. That is what I wanted to do. So you can just think for a moment what your epic win is. You can put it in the chat or not. It's totally up to you. Think about your epic win for a moment. Let's just sit in that just for a minute. Think about what your epic win is. For my clients, their epic win is writing and publishing a successful book. But you don't just sit down and write a book in a day or in an hour or in 2 days. It's a process. It's big. It can get hard. And so what you want to do is you want to break down that big epic win into quests. You want to have small quests. So think about playing Clue or Monopoly or Risk or a role-playing game, whatever it happens. Think about that. Think about the games you've played. Let's take Risk. You don't start Risk and immediately just win the game. You have to take over South America, take over Australia. And so that's a quest. It's something smaller, something that you can imagine actually doing. That's a quest. And so what you want to do is you want to take that big hard thing and turn it into a quest. So for me, one of my first quests was to find somewhere where the ground was soft, where we weren't going uphill or downhill. There were no rocks, there were no tree roots, and I could just walk in nature in a place that didn't cause me pain. And so that was my very first quest. And here's something good about quests. This is really important because this is what I do. I'm going to go on this epic journey to hike again, and I'm going to right now lay out every quest there is that I need to do. That's what I want to do. I'm a planner. I'm not a pantster. I'm a planner. I don't know if you relate, but I want to lay out every single quest. But I've learned that doesn't work sometimes. Sometimes you just have to focus on the quest in front of you, not worry about what's next. So if you've got something so big, so scary, big, scary, hairy goal, don't worry about the whole thing. Just one quest, one thing you can conquer. And so once you have that one thing, you work on accomplishing that. And when that's done, you can develop another quest. And that's how you do it, quest by quest by quest. When I'm backcountry hiking, I don't go from point A to point F. There are Camp B, Camp C, Camp D, Camp E. Camp F is where the fabulous views are, the glaciers, the mountains, but it takes me 6 days to get there. So each stage is a quest. Now, this sounds easy enough, doesn't it? But we all know it isn't, because what happens when we're playing games is there are bad guys, cousin and your best friend. They are probably the bad guys because they also want that same epic win that you want. And so you're trying to get them out of the way. So, but for my clients, let's talk about what some of the bad guys are. The fear of the blank page, the deer in the headlights. What is my book about? I have so many ideas, I don't know how to organize them. This book should be about everything. Or sometimes it's the fog of confusion. Just like I can't even see a path forward. So your bad guys can be actual people. They can be emotions. They can be things like pain, physical pain. They can be, could be a family member who's an obstacle. So the bad guys are all those obstacles that stand in your way, that feel at times impossible. I can tell you the pain in my leg at times can feel impossible. So what do you do when you face a bad guy? Well, what do you do in a game? So what we do in let's just take D&D. I don't know if you play Dungeons and Dragons, but just take it because they have the best fun power-ups, right? Like all of a sudden you're facing this ogre and you're losing and one of your mates is like down on the ground and you pull out your special power and you're like, Dungeon Master, I'm going to roll the dice and I'm going to use my special power to, my ogre defeating power. So power-ups. That is one thing you can do. And if you don't play D&D, I can tell you they have the best power-ups. Of all the games I've ever played, D&D has the best power-ups. So you come for a power-up. So when I was thinking about power-ups and how to explain this to you, I got on my phone and I started looking at photographs. Like what do I take photographs of? What's important to me? What are my power-ups? Well, I found this beautiful picture of the ocean. I was sitting by the ocean, I was looking out, and there were these two herons that were kind of together and they looked like they were in a heart shape. So I took a picture of that, and that just sitting in nature, even if I can't walk because of the pain, just being in nature powers me up. Matcha. I know some people like a latte or a tea or a glass of wine. I love a matcha latte. I love matcha. That's a power up. Every day I just sit quietly with a cup of matcha and it just powers me. This is my early morning power up before the day starts, is a cup of matcha. My good food. I love to cook. So when I'm feeling frustrated, I can walk into my kitchen and I can develop something, create something I want to eat that's beautiful and healthy and forget about all the other stuff. And that powers me up. And so I want to, oh, Alex, matches one of your power ups too. That's awesome. So you know what I love right now? So for me, power ups, nature, good food. I can get on my bicycle. If I am out and I'm walking and it's too painful, I can get home and I have a stationary bike that I can get on. I have hobbies, arts and crafts that I like to do. What I'd like to do right now is I'd like to know what powers you up. I'd like you to put it in the chat. And after you've put a couple of your power ups in the chat, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look at all the other power ups that people have put, and I'd like you to steal the ones you like. So just take a moment, put some power ups. Yes, ha ha ha, I get to steal, right? Steal like a good power up person. Go ahead and put your power ups in there because this is really important. What do you do when things get tough? You do something good for yourself. You do something that rejuvenates yourself. You power yourself back up. And while you're doing that, the other thing that helps you beat the bad guys, and this is a recurring theme here, are your allies. Your allies help you defeat the bad guys. So my clients, who are their allies? Me and my team. We're the allies when they're struggling with something, having a hard time with a story, or they're not sure how to organize something, they come to us and we help them. My allies, my Danielle, definitely my ally. She's helped me. She was here for a little while I've been healing, and that was really lovely. My eldest daughter, who when I eventually got back to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, where I live, she came over, and because I was on some very strong painkillers, she stayed with me for a few days and made sure I had the painkillers. And when she left, she did this amazing chart of when to take painkillers, and she set up alarms in my phone so my alarm would go off and I'd look and I'd see which painkiller I had to take. She was such an amazing ally. And I have a little black and white cat. And every time I was doing physiotherapy at home, for some reason, she sat by me. And she was my ally. For some reason, that cat knew that I was struggling, and she would just come and she would sit quietly beside me while I was trying to bend my foot into a proper position. So even your cat, your dog, your uncle, your best friend, these are your allies, and they can help you. They can help you re-energize. They can give you a hug. They can give you encouraging words. They can design quests for you. So think about your allies, I remember once, I went hiking with a friend and they were there. They were this ally, took me to a place where they thought I would be able to hike a little bit. And so they helped me with a quest and they encouraged me along the way. Your allies, your community is so powerful. And if you have two good allies, you've got plenty. So your allies. So where are we at here? Where are we at? We have something we want in our life. We want to heal. We want healthy relationships. We want our businesses to succeed. We want to afford the big trip we've always wanted. We want to finish our education. We want to start a podcast. We have all these things we want to do, and they feel hard because they are hard. I'm not saying they're not hard. They're hard. So instead of leaning into the struggle, let's lean into play. Let's take that epic win, that epic challenge, and let's design a quest that we can have fun with. And when we're going on that quest and the bad guys show up, let's power ourselves up. Let's hold on to our allies. Let's allow those around us to help us. And most importantly, when you finish that quest, stop. Don't go, yeah, that's done, got to move on. Stop. Celebrate. Something allies are very good at too, by the way, bringing a bottle of wine or whatever it is and celebrating with you, right? So stop and celebrate, because the science says that when we stop and we celebrate the small wins, we build momentum toward the bigger wins. And we discount our little wins, we're leaning back into struggle. When we celebrate our little wins, we're leaning into play, we're leaning into momentum, we're leaning into success. So what's your epic win? What's your first quest? Make sure you've got your power-ups and your allies linked in your arms. Use them and go play and enjoy. And I'm wishing you the best celebration when you finally get that epic win you want. Thank you. Danielle, thank you for having me here today.
Oh, Melody, such an inspiring story. You've got so much chatter going on in the chat. Everyone's loving it so much.
I?
Oh yeah,
I've been
you can read
ignoring you,
can read it. You can read it afterwards. No, it's not for you to read now, it's for you to read later. But yeah, I'm loving yeah, everyone's really relating to what you're saying. And just that taking time to celebrate, I think, is so important. I love your story. I'd also love to know where you are now, because you talked about your recovery, and I happen to know that you're planning on ending this talk every time you end this talk with an update. So I want an update of where are you at in your healing journey, because it's been a couple of years now.
It is. I'm actually having another surgery on Friday. So
congratulations.
Yeah, they realize that some of the hardware is causing pain, and so they're going to remove it. I won't get graphic, but it's not sitting by itself. It's mixing up with other things that are causing me pain. So they're going to remove it on Friday. And so I'll have two allies over for the weekend looking after me. And
And that may be a quest. That surgery may be a quest that you get to celebrate afterwards.
It will be.
It would be lovely to see. Yeah.
It will be. And I will be celebrating it actually, because Sunday is my birthday. And so I'm going out to a show on Sunday, probably drugged up, but I'm going with allies and they will look after me. But that show will be a huge power up and a huge celebration for this particular, quest being done, having that final surgery.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, it's very important to know. Does anyone have any? There's lots of wonderful comments in the chat. Does anyone have any questions for Melody before we move on? Anyone have any questions? I think you've got so much love in the chat for you to read. Oh yes, Elle, you are disappeared. You are a disembodied. Hand up.
Lighthouse.
Yeah,
I'm here. As I said, I am working. So Melody, when it comes to quests, because I would love to be able to kind of borrow that or steal, you gave me permission to be able to steal that as a parent.
Yes.
So how could that be used in parenting?
I actually think your Stranger Things story is a really good example. So the epic win is to feel connected to my child. And in order to do that, having small quests that allow me as a parent to be quiet, to sit still, and to listen and allow my child to lead. And so just, one quest could be sitting in the living room and saying, well, would you choose a movie for us to watch tonight? That could be a quest. And watching the movie and saying, wow, that was really cool. What do you love about it? That's a quest. That's a beautiful quest. Just one thing, right? I'll tell you a quest that I did as a parent with one of my kids. My youngest, not huge fan of vegetables, which is hard when you're a vegetarian. Um, and she didn't never wanted to eat anything. So one day I took her to the soup and as to the store and I said, we're going to make soup and you're going to choose everything that goes in it. And I took her to the vegetable section and she very happily put all these vegetables in the basket. And we went home and we cut them up together and we made soup. We called it after her. And she so happily ate that soup out.
That's awesome. Thank you very much,
So
Melody.
my epic win was to get her to eat vegetables. She loves vegetables now, but my quest was just to make a soup with her when she had full control of the vegetables. So she couldn't say she didn't like them. I just don't only pick things you want to eat. And that's what she did. And that she started, so I went on many quests with that child around eating vegetables. And that's one.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
That's hilarious. And Paula, you had a question too?
Hey, Paula.
Hi, I put it in the chat, but I just wanted to tap into your thoughts on the epic win evolution, where once you have made that achievement, you've gotten to this place. What's the epic win 2.0? How do you sort of see that fitting in the upgrade to the game?
Yes. So this is what I believe. At least this is what I have observed around humans. As soon as we're done one epic win, we've got another one right there, right? I bought my first house. Now I need this. Or I've got my PhD. Now I'm gonna do this. And I happen to know you're working on your PhD. So once that PhD is done, that's your epic win. I know you're gonna have something else that you're gonna want after that, and that's going to be your next epic win. And it may be related to the PhD, it may not be. It may be I've worked so hard on this PhD, my next epic win is something personal, maybe, biking around Europe or whatever it is, right? But I believe that humans always have an epic win that they want, sometimes more than one. But I don't think we would be stagnant if we didn't have something we wanted, right? We'd be stagnant if we didn't have something we wanted. Yeah. That's my perspective. And just so everyone knows, I'm now going to go into the comments and steal all your power-ups. I just want to say thank you very much for those.
Oh, I
Thank
see
you,
the
Danielle.
agenda here. I see the agenda.
And thank you, Paula.
Yeah, I love that. There's always another, but that's the kind of the good kind of ambition, when ambition encourages us to grow. It doesn't make us closed, but it opens us. Thank you so much, Melody, for your talk today, for sharing your story. And I look forward to an update. Well, when this goes on YouTube, I'll update everyone on how Melody's surgery's gone. Yeah, great. So thank you so much, Melody. Our next speaker is Wendy Yakboski, and I am going to grab her and then I'm going to tell you about her. We're going to have a chat. We're going to have a kind of a guided talk. We never really know exactly what's going to come up. It's not really a rehearsed chat. But she and I are going to be doing a podcast later this year. Wednesday Wisdom with Wendy or something like that. And so this is part of our experimentation for that. But also she's got a lot to say, and we have such great conversations. We wanted to share them. What was I going to do before that? Oh, I was going to read you her bio. Yes, before we start talking. Sometimes my brain just falls out. Okay. Wendy Yakboski, or Reverend Wendy, as she is known, is an ordained metaphysical minister with Canadian International Metaphysical Ministries. Trained and practiced in the New Thought teaching for well over 2 decades, Wendy believes that we are powerful beyond what we have been taught and are born with certain affinities of talent and ability for the purpose of not only our own fulfillment, but to help others. In this, Wendy provides support through speaking, teaching, and coaching, ever validating and supporting the power of choice to create greater good for all. And that is definitely the experience I have of Wendy, is just this huge heart and so much love and wanting to uplift everyone and help everybody else. Sometimes to her own detriment, which is kind of what we're going to be talking about today, because sometimes it's easy to hide behind helping others. And sometimes we got to set an example. So, Wendy, thank you for being here and talking with me today.
Oh, gosh, Danielle, thank you so much for the opportunity. Excuse me. Yeah, it's what you talk about helping others. It's interesting how closely, and I feel emotional as I say this. Oh my God, my first 12 words.
Yay! Emotions mean you're alive.
I know. But how closely helping others and people pleasing can kind of like dovetail. And I really see how helping others, I'm reminded of Matthias's talk, not your words, Matthias, but how caring about family, caring about friends and what they're thinking and what they're feeling about me, and my own sense of belonging, or scaredness of not belonging in my childhood really led to a lot of people pleasing. And another thing that's going to come up with what Danielle and I are talking about is the fear of even acknowledging, let alone living oneself, one's true self. So I really grew up believing that I needed to fit in order to belong. I needed to act how I thought, well, no, pardon me, as a child, I believe I needed to act in certain ways to belong, to have a family, as painful as that got at times. And what I can share with you right now, just in terms of what you said, Danielle, about helping others, thank goodness my helping others, at least to my conscious awareness, is about helping them be free of what I lived as a child in that way.
Mm-hmm.
If they are aware of that and want to move beyond that, it's so easy, oh my gosh, to cling to the identity. We spoke about identity and labels earlier, but the identity of responsibility for others' feelings as well as belonging, and then become afraid of looking at who we are. I speak for myself, who I was, because it never seemed to be right. Anyone else ever come through a childhood or an upbringing of right/wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And the consequences felt severe. And yeah, so it's an interesting thing, because what I first started talking with Danielle about, and did mention in the Q&A as well, is that my biggest fear, as much experience as I've had in speaking over the years, and knowing I had something to say, was actually providing something that came 100% from me, or at least as much as one can say it comes 100% from us. it scares the hell out of me to um, base, how can I say this? I'm just being really vulnerable here, to base a new identity on who I am with the risk that I won't belong with those that are hearing it. And so my epic win will be with the little quests that I'm going to work through in this is being able to come to that place of like Matthias said, so many amazing speakers, like Matthias said, that he had to know his own story before he could, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use my words again, sorry. Not sorry, but not sorry.
Yes, not sorry.
To be help others in the way that I want to. I want to help people feel free to validate themselves, and I will help validate them, even as Danielle has helped validate me in my learning with her, so that I can actually do it in the way that I feel called to, because so many of us need freedom. That's not a judgment. I think that's a fact. It's safe to hang with others.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
not a bad, it's not a wrong thing. It's just not the full thing.
Yeah, and what you said about, that confronting that fear, having the courage to be yourself in the face of potential rejection. I think that's the ultimate surrender and trust is if I put myself out there, someone will resonate. And we're not for everyone, and that's okay. We don't need to be for everyone. Like Melody said, we only need like 2 allies. We don't need a lot of people to be our deep people. And even in business, in marketing, they say, you only need 1% of the world's population to connect with you because the world is huge and we have the internet now, so it makes it easier. But also, I loved what you said about, so many of us are conditioned in certain ways to do certain things. Certain things are okay, certain things aren't okay. And we learn patterns when we're very young.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes all we can do is what we can do. Yes, we have there's an ideal way that we would like to do things. But in the moment, having that compassion and that self-awareness to go, this is the pattern I'm running now. How can I find a way to make this pattern serve me? The way kind of Brooke was saying that if she could change herself to be better for someone else, then maybe she could figure out how she could do it for herself. And also, when you need to go backwards, go back a step, figure it out, and then come forwards again, and giving yourself that compassion to be where you are. And I'd love for you to speak to that, because I know we were talking about the way we approach fear.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something the other day about the different ways to approach fear. And you thought there was only one way to approach fear at the beginning. So tell me about that.
I think the term that could be used is headbanging.
Not
No,
the
seriously.
not the dancing, the running against the wall.
Let me clarify. That's not head banging against the wall. I used to think that because I had so few boundaries growing up, and was so attached to pleasing, that I thought that the only way for me to move forward was with brute force. So there were things that I may not have felt ready to do, which and I felt I had to do, which isn't always a bad thing. I have grown through that, but it was harsh, and again, I was talking about how the experience in the Q&A, Danielle, where I felt so freaked out hearing that I couldn't have notes, I couldn't have my blanket, that let me breathe here. But yet I learned by breathing, which you always remind us to do, another thought would come, which it just did. And I didn't realize until our conversation, Danielle, what my pattern was. Honestly, I just kept thinking I was a failure because it seemed like I kept failing. And and that's actually not the truth. It's just where I stopped at the time. Um, I'm so grateful for this summit that you're doing, because what's coming up for me is the reminder that I haven't stopped. Yes, I had a a misperception that I was a failure, but it was a moment in time, actually a couple of moments in time, and I am ready to learn a greater way of ease in moving forward that speaking is a beautiful metaphor for. Oh my gosh, I had no idea that being gentle with myself could actually move me forward. I know what? um, and I bet a lot of people on this call, maybe even yourself, Danielle, would believe that you had to be tough with yourself to move forward. Pull up the socks, get rid of that feeling, whatever that feeling is that's getting in the way. When the converse is true, it's actually embracing the feeling, embracing the fact that, and also the resistance that part of me that is trying to protect me from what I experienced and feared before is actually, in fact, when I can embrace myself. Oh my God. When I can embrace myself, that I have my own back going forward. Not to say allies aren't necessary, because you are totally necessary, Danielle. um, but the allies of everyone on this call who has shared their experience, and Alex yet to come, has shared their experience that life is survivable. And I've got this far by some part of me knowing that there's more to, I want to say achieve, but in a different way.
Explore.
Explore is a good word.
Yeah, more to be, more to play with, more to, yeah.
Yeah, and this is new. And I appreciate you confirming those words. Those were not words that I knew before. And I'm not willing to truly fail, which is to stop trying.
Yes. One of my coaches says you only fail when you stop. You only fail when you quit. When you do a final quit. I do lots of mini quits. It's part of my coping mechanism. So when you do the final quit, that's the only time you fail. Otherwise, if you don't quit, you won't fail. Eventually, you'll get somewhere. I love also. There's a thing I see on Facebook every now and again, which I just love. Uh, your current record for surviving bad days is 100%. And it's true, but it doesn't. Our bodies don't tell us that. The fear system, and this is why I think speaking is such a great metaphor for so many types of fear and ways we grow in life, because you can throw yourself into the deep end with speaking. You can overcome the fear, you can get up there, you can do the thing. But when you do that, you engage your fight or flight. You
Yes.
re-traumatize yourself, and it becomes harder to do the next time. And it becomes harder and harder and harder. And some people, maybe the fear isn't quite so big, or they haven't been conditioned in a certain way. And so they can throw themselves in the deep end and they can learn to swim that way because they're lucky. But a lot of us, if when we do that, even though it's our society is always saying, like, tough it out, just do it and it'll get better, exposure therapy and all that stuff. And exposure therapy is important. Teaching yourself that you will survive is important, but doing it in a way that is re-traumatizing yourself, I think, is worse, and it makes it harder every time, and it reinforces a trauma. Whereas when we're and for some people, speaking is an actual trauma. Like I'm not using that word lightly. Uh, but I also think that if we come at it gently, and Wendy, you and I have both had the opportunity to work with Evelyn McKelvey, who actually was commenting in the Facebook group. So hi, Evelyn. We've actually had the chance to work with her with horses on the ground and learn how to, you know, they give you so much feedback because all of their feedback is nonverbal, and they won't bullshit you. You know, they'll tell you where you're at, but you have to approach them indirectly. If you walk to a horse straight on, like in between their eyes, they're gonna respond in a certain way. But if you want to approach them in a way that they're going to be more accepting to, more receptive to, you come at them indirectly. And I think a lot of our fears and a lot of the really big scary things, we don't have to meet them dead on. If it's working for you, do it. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's not the only way. And I think that's so important about recognizing where you are. And for all of us, you know, we're all in different places in different parts of our lives. I mean, you're a minister. You speak as part of what you do, you know, it's part of your life, and you're very good at that. But there's different types of public speaking that make you very fearful. And so we have different levels of mastery and different levels of our life that we're not balanced in that way. And so doing what you can, having that self-awareness to go, I can throw myself in the deep end here, but here I need to go slowly. And understanding that we can have a different relationship with fear and goals, even within different circumstances, I think is so important, don't you?
I do think it's so important. And one thing that just keeps popping up for me to say, which may or may not have anything to do with what we're talking about, but I remember thinking, about how likes can be so important to people. The more
Yes.
likes, and that is so seductive. Like I want
Mm.
everyone to like me, and and you know, there's some part of that I really need to look at, and I'm actually not really talking about likes on Facebook, although
Mm.
many of us deal with that, especially in business or when we're offering a service or something like
Mhm.
that. But just the old idea, I guess it really just comes back to me liking myself. But
Mhm.
I thank you for mentioning about all the successes that I have had, because I really have had a lot of successes, and I'm certainly not saying. I said I felt like a failure. I'm not a failure.
Yes.
Uh, and
Important
so
distinction.
being really vulnerable when I talk, because I don't know how many people are here from when I've spoken at various spiritual centers. Um, but I'm just saying that we're all human, and accepting humanness, I'm coming to learn, is part of me letting go of needing to resist my humanness so that I can actually make a better decision to move forward. Like
Mm.
self-like, is so important, and
Mhm.
like you say about throwing ourselves into the deep end in terms of unscripting what we're saying.
Mhm.
It would be hard without somebody validating, like you having said that,
Choosing your allies.
yeah.
Absolutely. But I think choosing your allies, and I think this is part of it. Like if we know we're not strong enough to do something, finding ways to buffer ourselves up. So if I know that my self-confidence isn't very high or my self-love isn't very good, I know that there are certain people I can go to who will always validate me. And so
Yeah.
not trying to be loved by everyone, because I think that's a kind of a more generalized way of doing it, but kind of when we can go, okay, what am I missing? I'm missing my self validation, my self love. And so I'm using other people to fill that up for me. Okay, fine. That's where I'm at. That's all I can do. I can only do what I can do. Can I choose who those people are? Instead of going, I want everyone to like me because I'm feeling a deficit, can I go, these three people will fill my deficit and they will
Mm,
help me to grow. And so it's always part of like, and then they will help me to grow my internal sense of love, so that eventually I am strong enough to be my own. I love that you said, I have my own back, that I can be my own safe space. I think that's so important. And just as a quick aside, and my clients will get this, and the people who aren't my clients may not, but your rib reserve, your floating ribs, they've got your back. Your floating ribs have got your back. Your breathing is so important. But it's, it becomes an internal thing. It becomes an internal structure of, we can create safety. We can be turtles, and carry our safety with us. But it doesn't just come like that. Everything needs to be built. And some of us are coming from a place of conditioned unsafety. And so we have to learn to build that for ourselves. And it's not everyone's starting from the same starting point. And we all have different strengths and different weaknesses and different traps. So I think that's so brave and so vulnerable of you, Wendy, to acknowledge, but also to have that and thinking. It's not all or nothing. I am good here. I'm not so great here. I can improve over here. And the more nuanced we allow our lives to be, I think the less of that facade is there. We were talking earlier about having that's what creates imposter syndrome, is having a facade of perfection, or, oh, look, I'm so good at this, or a facade of confidence, maybe even. But when we can acknowledge the complexity of our self-esteem and our knowledge and our expertise, then we can say, I'm really good at this. I'm terrible at this. I'm working on it. And it doesn't become a loss of face, because we're so in reality,
Yes. Yeah, exactly. In terms of the struggle that I've been having, in terms of deciding what it is that I want of me to be able to offer others, to help. The other day, I was actually, probably yesterday morning, was thinking in my journaling, one of my allies, what is it that I'm working on, that I'm coming to know, that I could help others with, rather than thinking I need to have it all together, all out. Maybe that's what is stopping me temporarily, is this thinking I have to have it all together before I start.
Well, you can't. It's kind of impossible to start. Again, I'm going to use speaking as an example because it's so perfect. You cannot become a good public speaker without interacting with the public. And so we all have to begin as novices. We all have to begin badly, because you cannot improve. You may improve as a speaker in your basement by yourself, but you will not improve as a public speaker without speaking in public. And so we all have to start there. And this idea that we have to have everything together, that I have to have my entire course together. And actually, this is funny because Wendy was actually part of this class. I taught a course which I thought I had to have fully together before I delivered it. And I'm not saying don't have an idea of your course, but it was just funny because I wanted it to be perfect before I had it out there. And and I did. I finished it and I delivered it. And within the first week, people were asking questions where I was like, oh, damn, I wish I'd included that. And so I had to re-record the whole thing. Well, I made edits, but it's just so funny because we think that we can create perfect on our own, but we can't. It's not possible. And so if we think, and actually this thought is thanks to Matthias, if we think of our businesses or our talks or what we're giving, what we're teaching, like software, it's iterative. This is just the first. This is the first version. And then I'm going to get feedback from my market. And they're going to give me great ideas. And then I'm going to release some upgrades. And then I'm going to have version 2.0 and continue that way and allow ourselves to have the humility and the courage to grow in public.
Yes. And I keep thinking about self-awareness as well. One of the things I teach in the Living Life to the Full program that I do through Canadian Mental Health Association is reminding people that what we're learning in each of these 8 modules is about self-awareness. This isn't about self-judgment. It's easy for me to say, but I understand that it can't be about self-judgment, because self-judgment limits us and narrows us to be able to move forward in what it is that we either want to learn or be or do or have. So without self-awareness, and without that we can embrace to some degree, we can't move forward, because we don't know. We're not aware to know what it is that that's needing to be maybe be loved, rather than judged, and asking for the help that we need.
Loved rather than judged. Oh my goodness, that's a mic drop. Wow. Uh, and that's something that helps me is I have an acting background, and one of the things that acting coaches will often ask you, instead of coming to an answer, can you live in this question for the next however long, months, years, maybe, live in this question. And I love that way of looking at it, because it opens possibilities, and it encourages creativity and curiosity, and that kind of yes and feeling. So living in a question, because we are wrapping up the end of our talks and the next one is coming. Our last speaker, ladies and gentlemen, so exciting. Wendy, what question do you have for our audience to live in? What can you invite people? What question would you like to invite people to live in, given this conversation we've just had?
I think the question to ask ourselves is both, how can I love myself through this? And also, how can I accept myself through this, knowing that I'm doing the very best that I can, and that in loving myself is how I move forward? How can I do that more?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's so beautiful. Oh, Wendy, it has been a joy to talk with you today. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Wendy before we move on to our final speaker? Just put up your hand if you have any questions. We have these lovely rambling conversations, which I just always get so much out of. They're always so juicy. So look out for the podcast coming later this year. LJ, you have a question for Wendy?
Yes, Wendy. I can just see myself in everything that you were talking about. It was so relatable, so connecting. So thank you very much for sharing that. My question is, as you shared those reflective look at yourself in the mirror questions, um, what has been the strength in being able to face yourself the way that you have as a minister in front of others, and they see you growing and maturing? And you're talking about people pleasing. So they've seen you one way, and now you're showing up a different way, probably subtly to them, but you're still different. How do you deal with that?
I think on two levels, LJ, thanks so much for the question. I have had a lot of help over the years. Counseling help, et cetera, et cetera. I've always been passionate about learning more and more and more about self-development and working with it as well as I can. But my highest ally for me is the spiritual aspect of my life. I'm going to share just a quick example, if I can, Danielle. After about a year and a half of not speaking, choosing to take a sabbatical, I said yes to speaking at a spiritual center. And even though I was much better because I'd rested and was working with myself, etc., I found that some of the same things were coming up. You know, the fear of making a difference, or doing it right, or doing it well. And that morning, which I always wake up at 4 o'clock, even though sometimes that's when my structure comes for the talk, I thought to myself, I had a choice. Am I going to read A Course in Miracles? Is another spiritual reference that I have that really blesses me. Am I going to read the lesson for today? Or am I going to just head right in, like I said, head banging in to figuring out a structure, to, what am I going to say and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, I am going to read today's lesson, spiritual lesson. And even though I know that I care, I care about the people that I talk to. I want to support them in love as well. What that lesson gave me was about being the presence of love,
Mm.
giving love,
Mm.
but being that presence of love in me. And I swear to you, when I finished that lesson, the outline came without struggle. I lost the fear. I drove to the venue without fear. It like transformed me,
Mm.
so I hope that's helpful, LJ, and anyone else that might have wondered. It was not thinking, it wasn't about doing, it was about being,
Yes.
which is also about speaking. But
Right.
so so that's how I support myself, from the spiritual aspect that reminds me of the truth of who I am and
Mhm.
what I want to be in order to give to others.
Mhm.
Thank you very much, Wendy, because that's in line with what I like. There's so much alignment here, Danielle. Like, how'd you find everybody?
They found me. I don't know.
Yes. So you attracted some very like people. Thank you very much, Wendy.
Thanks, LJ.
I like the through line. I'm very happy with the people I'm attracting. Thank you so much, Wendy, for this. I am going to unspotlight you for a moment. Oh, and there was something I desperately wanted to say that you mentioned, and now it's gone. Oh, I wanted to say, it's funny because we always want, oh, and this relates to speaking in this way. I when I talk about stage fright and overcoming stage fright, and I think also a lot of all of the coaches talk about this, that it's not enough to just want to do the thing. You have to know your why. And I talk about layers of truth when we're nervous. I can be nervous and I care about what you think and I want everyone to like me. And that is always true. But also, I've been doing this for a while and I've been watching you guys talk and you're all so amazing. And also, I have this my real deep why, in that I want to live in a world where people are more emotionally expressive and honest. And I want to live in that world. So I want to help create it. And if we can connect to that why, and I think that's what you were doing, Wendy, when we connect to that really deep part of ourselves, it overshadows everything else. And suddenly our fears aren't that big a deal. So that's also something to think about. Uh, Alrighty, we have our final speaker. I am so excited. Alex is going to be talking about something very, very important to, I think, a lot of us and very close to my heart for sure. Alex, I'm just going to add your spotlight and then I'm going to read your bio. Where are we? Here we are. So this is going to be a really exciting conversation too. We've saved the exciting conversations for the end. The best part, the juicy part. Not that they are, it's all juicy, of course. It's been amazing. This conversation is very important to me because it's taking all of the stuff that we've been talking about and the personal part, but also bringing it into the world and how we can spread this out into things. So Alex Moore is a bookkeeping professional based out of the Pacific Northwest, and they're here to give you your business the boost it deserves. Sorry, tripped over that. After nurturing their love for working with numbers, and yes, such people do exist, and wanting to find a way to support people who don't, they naturally fell into the finance world. Rather than angle for a corporate drone path, they chose to show up for other entrepreneurs looking to build something that they are proud of. And that is part of what we're going to talk about today, is what it's like to be an entrepreneur and how we can be allies for each other and support each other. So Alex, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you, Danielle. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to Wendy and everyone else that has been speaking. I feel very honored to be going last because I really feel like it's been so inspiring to listen to everyone else, and it's been so wonderful to just like be able to kind of really ride off of everyone's passion and everything they're sharing. So thank you so much. Excuse the there. I just had an Amazon delivery show up, and so our dog in the house is very upset about it. So I apologize for if you can hear
Protecting your
that dog in the
territory.
house. But yes,
Protecting your territory and protecting you from the very scary Amazon
yeah,
delivery guy.
very scary Amazon drivers.
Very scary. Well, so this is my favorite question for you because this actually kind of sparked our whole conversation in a way. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I would love to. I on the business answer that I love to share and to share more about what I do is I'm the owner of BeBook. I own a bookkeeping firm that really has a focus on helping service-based business owners that are doing work that helps other people. And I'm really looking to support those people. And in the time that I've been developing this business and this brand, I've been really having to figure out, you know, how much do I myself personally fit into that brand? Where is that line between Alex and BeBook? And how do these things come together? And I wish I had more of an answer to that. It's something I've been absolutely exploring and really enjoying hearing from other people that are also solopreneurs and kind of figuring out how that looks and navigating that. But so far, my short answer is that I don't really know, but at a baseline, I know that I have this business that is trying to do work, and I'm a part of it, and I am showing up.
I love that. We don't always know exactly who we are in relation to our business, but I do think that, especially solopreneurs and small business owners, most of us get into business because it's something that we love. We'd get into big business if we wanted to make big bucks. If we're doing small business, it's usually because we're very passionate about something. And so our values may be reflected in our business. Where do you think your values, like what's the relationship between your personal values and your business values personally for you?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I feel like where you really have to start when you are building a business, and regardless of what you're doing, I think it's important to look at your personal values, use it as a baseline, layered with what you want to do and who you want to work with, and just finding where those things intersect. And so for myself, they are very similar, but figuring out where things shift from my personal view and my own perception of the world and the opinions that I have, and then looking at also who I want to work with, who is in my community, what are the values that they have, and also finding this alignment and kind of as it comes back to community is another big aspect of it, and really understanding that those things can also be, flexible and they're going to change, and it not being this hard, fast list of exactly like this is who I am, this is what my business is based on what I feel like it's going to be, and allowing that to be something that is flexible and to change. But it definitely started with identifying my own values and what I wanted to do with them in the business that I created.
Well, and it's funny you talk about this because I think one of your values, which you're about to talk about, is kind of reflective of what you're struggling with, in that a lot of us want to be a little bit more human in our interactions in business now. And that's part of what you bring to what you do. You're not just a bookkeeping service. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I loved that you used that word, just human, because also tying back to when you introduced this entire summit today of talking about this through line of just humanness, and both in the connection of everyone that was speaking today and what they had to speak about, but also that I feel like something that is a general feeling for a lot of people right now is this desire to connect on more of a human level, and how over the past few decades or longer in different ways, there's been this slowly becoming this more of a disconnect with people. And in the business world, especially, it can so quickly just things can go so disconnected and so cold and transactional, and just not really seeing each other as people in business quite as often in some circumstances. And really, what I've been trying to do is to take the work that I do and really trying to make that something that is just meeting people where they are, and really just, regardless of how transactional the service can be, just understanding that even in business, you're just, people talking to each other, and having more of a focus on that is really something that I've been trying to shift in the accounting space.
Mm. And I think it's not something that we traditionally think of as being a vulnerable experience talking to your bookkeeper or your accountant. But everyone that I know who runs a small business is terrified of sharing their numbers because it's actually very revealing. It can be quite vulnerable. So tell me about that. Like, what's your experience been about that? Do you find that people do feel vulnerable sharing their intimate details of their business with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's intimate, and it is something that is necessary to get support in an aspect that is necessary in any kind of business, and in understanding the numbers, and making sure things are organized, and to be meeting the deadlines and the compliance that can come with it. And I really love what Wendy had shared about um, that kind of common um, need to feel like you have to have everything together in order to start. And that is really something that people really have to face quite often when, they approach their finances and their books. And, you know, business owners wear a lot of hats. And when people are coming into a business and they have this great idea and they're really wanting to do something with it and help people, and that can easily become an aspect where, especially if people are starting out with very little knowledge or understanding on how to handle that, it can get pushed back on the back burner because there's so many other hats that are getting worn. And, I like to envision the green visor as the accounting hat.
Yes.
And that's one that gets left behind, and which is absolutely fair. And it's important to me to make space for people to show up as they are. And it's like, however your books look, that's okay. It's the fact that you are seeking support, looking to understand that it's important, and making time for it. Like that's where you start. That's enough. And um, it's been really great to see some people that I've worked with directly, and also have heard other people work with in this accounting landscape, of how much that can really help people, and the importance of, you know, just giving people space to just show up as they are.
And then with that vulnerability, so kind of building on that, we're already vulnerable, we're already feeling kind of judged about the way we spend our money and not feeling together and all that stuff. And then adding on to that, if we are a member of a minority community, like BIPOC or the queer community, or there are many minority communities depending on where you are, uh, that can add an extra layer of potential judgment from the person that you're receiving a service from. And just that extra layer of, oh, this is scary and so vulnerable and I don't want to do it. And it may lead people not to engage someone who could actually really help them build their business, or make it so much less pleasant, at least, or maybe even unsafe. So can you speak to that? Like, because obviously you are a member of the queer community and you work with a lot of queer owned businesses. Uh, does that how does that factor in? Like, is it a factor?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that is, what I was really hoping to share today, and with that topic of really highlighting the importance and the value of minority representation in professional services. And it's just it's very layered, and, beyond just the innate support that can come with seeing yourself
Mm,
reflected in just different spaces, especially when you're spending a lot of time in spaces where you don't feel seen or respected or understood. But beyond that, there's this layer of um, the level of service that can be provided, and how much that can really be improved when working with someone that not only sees you for who you are, but also understands the nuances that can come with owning a business
mhm.
um, as a minority. It could be either in the resources that you do or don't have access to. It could be the client base that you have and the people that you serve, or the services that you offer, and the nuances that can come with how you navigate that. Um, there's just so many things that can really affect the kind of service that is received when you are fully understood and seen. And it's been really important for me to not only make that space, but really stay open to understanding the nuances that can come that even I don't directly understand. It's important for me to not only be making space in the queer community that I am also a part of and am more aware of the nuances of, but also other minority groups that I don't have that direct insight into different hurdles or challenges they may have. But just understanding and making the space that they're there, and whether I see them or not, making the space to actively be listening and understanding that there are nuances to how they operate in life as a business owner, and just making space for that and really bringing that humanness to a service that is traditionally very cold and transactional. The finance world is, there's a lot of different ways in business, and especially just in capitalist America, that things can get very disconnected from people. It can be very cold, very transactional, but especially in the finance world. And ever since I've been coming into this, it's been recognizing that and figuring out how to strike that balance of offering an important service, of working with numbers and being transactional in the places that you need to be, while also doing that in a way that is very connected and understanding who you're working with and who they're working with, and really blending that community aspect and the humanness and just being grounded in that.
Listening is such an important part of being in service, I think, in any service industry, and especially in the professional services. I'm thinking of, I don't know, accountants, doctors, lawyers, therapists. Listening, very important. And meeting someone where they're at. And in order to do that, understanding their values and how their values affect their choices and affect the type of business they want to run, and those things. So you've had experience on both ends as a business provider and as a client, obviously. Do you have some examples of different ways that you've met people where they're at and what their needs might be, and understanding their values in their business?
Yeah, there's a couple clients I work with that have been so incredible to work with and see the differences in value that they get while being on two very different ends of the spectrum. So I have one client that is a part of the queer community, very outspoken about it, very important element of their business as far as making that very publicly known, supporting a lot of other people in the queer community. It's a big part of their marketing, and that is something that is a very core element of their business. And working together has been great in that I'm able to see them, I'm part of the same community. It's been so wonderful to be able to help them in these different aspects. There's been things that we've worked on together, as far as I've been able to give better suggestions on marketing, and as being a part of their demographic, as part as their ideal client in a way, and being able to give more specific elements on when we're talking about the finance portion of marketing, just little things like that I'm able to kind of give a stronger insight into. And there's been ways that they've really developed a lot, and we've worked through a lot as far as helping them gain a better understanding of their finances, and also be able to use that information to make more informed decisions in developing that business. And on the other end, I have another client that I really enjoy working with, and they are someone that they own a shop that is working in a more rural area. And for their safety and for the volume of their business, they don't advertise that they are queer owned. That is something that is personal for the owner, and they fear that the safety of themselves and their shop and their employees might be at risk if they are too public about it. They might lose business. There's a lot of elements that really put it into perspective that not everyone has the privilege of being fully themselves at all times. And working together with them has been so valuable for both of us in the way that I'm able to see that the time that we spend together working on their business, talking about their business, they are sitting down in front of me after coming directly from this shop where they weren't fully themselves, and we sit down together and we have these conversations, and where they know that they're fully seen and understood, and they can just breathe and just fully be themselves as a business owner, as a person, and be seen. And so when because of that, they share more nuance about things that they need help with. I'm able to better hear them when they're sharing some struggles that they have. And we've also been able to do great work together, as far as helping them to reach some goals that they have financially within their business. And I feel like part of that is because we are able to collaborate so closely together in the time that we have. So that's been a really great opportunity to really see the difference in how that kind of representation can help people. And it's just been really, I'm very grateful to have been able to work with my clients and see how much it helps them.
Well, and what a relief, if you're having to amputate part of yourself 8 hours a day, to at least have some time where you can just relax and be yourself. But also, even if they make the choice not to include that part of their identity in their business publicly, being able to be that with you and anyone who is helping with their business means that they have more of their autonomy. They have a bigger picture that they're making the decisions from. So they're at least, whatever their
Mm-hmm.
decisions might be, they're making these fully explored decisions because they're not having to hide part of who they are from the people that are helping them make the decisions. Even if they choose to hide that from, the general public or whatever, it's a very well-informed choice, and it's well thought out, and it's very well supported, which I think is so beautiful that people can be supported in that way. You talk about values and the way that we spend our time and the way that we spend our money. There's a word for this that you and I have spoken about, and we've kind of danced around today, but we haven't used, conscious capitalism. So can you tell me a bit about, because who you like to work with and your personal values and how you like to, because you said you like to work with heart-based entrepreneurs. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to just kind of dig into at least my interpretation of conscious capitalism. There are different definitions of it, and it's something that is slowly evolving. But ultimately, you know, considering your dollars as votes and really thinking about, as a consumer, where do you want your money to go? Um, and when possible, taking the time to better understand where your money is going, and not just being more informed, but making different decisions on kind of where you want to vote essentially with your money. And on the business end of things, really understanding the nuance to that and learning how to own a business, um, in a capitalist economy, which there's no way around it. You have to be a part of capitalism to own a business. And so doing that aspect of the things that you need to do, but beyond that, as far as looking at the things that you can decide about how you run your business, and really feeling that that is value aligned, and just feeling really confident in the choices that you're making. And it can be really difficult. There's many elements to that, as far as finding the balance of treating your employees well, but not overcharging, and all these different aspects that come into it as a business owner. But ultimately, it does come down to values and just taking more time to think about where your money goes, and who you want to support.
Hmm. And something that's something we can all do, especially if we want to be allies to any minority communities. We can be more conscious. It takes a few more minutes to look up a directory, oh, excuse me, or do some research on who's providing the service, so that we are putting our dollars, you know, our money where our mouth is. Um, so do you have any other kind of calls to action for us as consumers, as business owners, as humans in the world, how can we help build up this representation of minorities in the professional services so that we can have a more well-represented, better served world?
Yeah, I would say, when possible, taking that little bit of extra time to look into, to make that choice of where you want your money to go, and look into the community as much as possible, as far as just anyone, in your space. The small business community where you are is always a great place to start. And that's part of why I really love, there's this resource called Everywhere is Queer that is essentially a map that will show where there are different queer-owned businesses that have joined and are certified, and you can see where they are, and you can kind of sort by industry or what you're looking for, and that is a really great resource within the queer community. But in general, just think about, on a value level, who do you want to support, and then take the time that you can to find where they are and support them. And I'm really grateful for resources like that, where that is helping make that an easier thing to do. But ultimately, just think about where your money wants to go, and really consider your dollars as your votes.
And the internet is a big place. It's amazing the directories you can find when you are looking for professionals who support certain types of minority communities. And if you can't find one, maybe you have some friends who know, so just doing the bit we can, and doing the best that we can. If we are allies or part of a certain community, if you feel safe advertising that, doing that, because it helps. Every little bit of representation helps, I think. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Alex, so much. Does anyone have any questions for Alex? Lots of thank yous, lots of comments as usual. Lots of complimentary comments for you, Alex, in the chat. But does anyone have any questions? LJ, yes.
Hey, Alex, thank you so much for what you do. As a fellow former accountant, I recognize how people can resist sharing information in that realm. So I want to say thanks for creating that safe space. And as you were sharing, like what can we do to have others connect with you and your services? Because you are in Canada and you help people in the US, or?
Alex is in Portland.
I'm actually in the US.
Oh.
Yeah, Portland, Oregon. I do work anywhere in the US because I am remote, but I am based in Portland.
Awesome. Thank
Aha.
you.
Yes.
Like, I'm also in the US.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
Yes. Danielle is going to be sharing my website in the
there
chat.
already.
And there's a little bit more info just about myself, the business, and just a way to get in touch with me. And I love chatting with people, even if people aren't in any position to talk about specific services or anything like that. My favorite thing that has really made me come to love networking and entrepreneurship overall is just getting to talk to people and hear about what people do. It's just so inspiring to hear, the things that people take that jump to get into and have this vision of something they want to do and create and go for it, and are really looking to do some good in the world. And anyone that is in that space, I love talking to, and I love hearing about what people do. So I would love to, I believe on my website is my LinkedIn as well. I love to connect with people and hear about what people do. So thank you very much for asking about that, Elle. I appreciate it.
You are welcome. Thank you.
And Steph had a similar question, but you already answered it. So you two definitely need to connect on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing with us today. I think it's such an important thing to talk about, representation. And this is part of why we're here. This is part of why we're speakers, is because we want to get our message out, right? And we want to fly our freak flag, as I say. My personal freak flag. I'm not calling any of you freaks. I call self-identify. But yeah, it's just, I think it's so important. And what I've loved about everyone who shared today is we're all just showing up where we are. No one's pretending to be perfect. We all have so much to offer. It's not that there isn't a huge amount of value in this room. It's just that we're not pretending. And it's so refreshing and so human to have a passion and go after it unready, because really that's the only option. That's all we can do. And I think also that speaks to me, because I think when I think of who I want to do business with, where I want to spend my money, I don't ever want to work with someone who says that they're perfect and that they have all the answers, because that leaves no space for me or my interpretation or growth, and obviously they're lying because no one knows everything. So now I'm working with a liar. And why would I want to do that? So this idea that we have to pretend to have all the answers, that we have to pretend to be perfect, is actually getting in our way, because it undermines trust. And when we work with people, we want to build, know, like, and trust, right? So the more we can be vulnerable, the more we can be relatable, the more we can be 100% or as close as possible to in reality as we can about what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what we offer, what we're willing to go and hunt down with my with my high ticket program, the 1 year program that I offer. I call it the only speaking program that you'll ever need, and that's a guarantee. Not because I know everything, but because if something comes up that we don't know, I will go and find it and I will bring it back. Not because I'm like, well, I know everything, but because my enthusiasm for it is such, and my dedication, my devotion is such, my commitment is such, that any needs will be met as they arise. Not that I can predict everything, because we can't. We're human beings. We can't predict everything. And so everyone has given either contact information or a gift today. I really encourage you to click on those links. If you are watching the replay, they will be in the description below. I also have a gift, and please connect with me. Find me on LinkedIn. I think might be the only Danielle Benson. So just search my name. You'll find me on LinkedIn. But also I have a gift. And my gift is the speaking coach in your pocket. Because as you might have noticed, not all speakers are the same, but we are all wonderful in our own weird, quirky ways, and we all have our own strengths. And so it is not possible to give cookie cutter advice. We need a speaking coach in your pocket. And it is not yet a little mini me that you can carry around in your pocket, although we will get there. But right now it is a guide with kind of question answer. In this situation, you can do this. In this situation, try this. Oh, what are you struggling with? Here's what I would normally advise. You can also book a call with me on that same page is a space to book a call with me. Absolutely no charge to it. But if you are curious about the speaking industry, or what finding your voice might feel like, or where you might fit in, or you've tried a little and you're not sure, it's an overwhelming world. And you don't need to do all of it. You only need to do the bits you're interested in. So book a call with me. I have what I call a speaking success map, where we explore the lay of the land, and then we plot a personal path just for you, because everyone has their own definition of success. Everyone has their own peaks that they want to visit. Not everyone needs to go to the forest of TED Talk or the waterfall of online content. We all have our own places that we want to go and visit on our way to the peak of success. And so that is my gift to you, the speaking coach in your pocket. But also, if you want to book a call with me, please do. I would love to just help you figure things out. Orient yourself, this is where I am on the map, and this is where I want to go moving forward. Because now more than ever, the world needs your voice. It is time to stop hiding. If you have been wanting to get your message out, if you have a big fire and a big fear, it is time to lean into the fire, to stoke that fire, to fan those flames, because the world needs more humanness right now. We don't need more perfect robotic speakers. We don't need more people hiding behind PowerPoint. We don't need any of that. What we need is real human connection. And that is what I want to help people bring out into the world. So if that is something that excites you, but also maybe terrifies you, as you may have noticed, I will only very gently push you. So do come talk to me. It's a completely free of charge call. There's no obligation. It is my passion to help make as much good in the world as possible, help amplify the voices that need amplifying. The minorities, the people who have their heart in the right place, the people who want to do good, the people who want to help each other. And it's my passion to help folks do that. So I want to say thank you, absolutely everybody who has been, so many of you have stayed on the whole time. Thank you so much. This was a long event, so thank you for being here. And for those of you who had to come in and out, the replay will be up on the YouTube channel, so you can check it out there. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for participating. And thank you for being courageous and vulnerable. Thank you so much to our speakers. You did an amazing job. And I can't wait to see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Farewell.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See everyone
Thank
here.
you, Danielle.